Right.
But with that, welcome everyone to the Blaine County Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of March 9th, 2017. We all appreciate your efforts to be here and participate in this process. The single agenda item tonight is the application of Camp Rainbow Gold for a conditional use permit at 708 East Fork Road for their proposed operation. Since there may be some of you who are not here at the February 9th meeting, I'm going to use the same introduction. Many different opinions are in the room tonight, each of them valid to the person who holds them. I request that everyone will show the same courtesy and respect to others that they wish to have expressed to them. This is a golden rule, and if it is followed, it will make this process more efficient and less stressful for everyone involved. There is an agenda and information sheet which has been handed out when you entered the room. It is important that you read this information. It will help your participation. If anyone did not receive this, please raise your hand. A staff person will bring you one. And with this, I'm going to turn it over to staff Tom Bergen for notice review.
Yes, we might need to have you raise your hand again when some of the staff that are out front come inside. And so hold off for a moment on that, and when I see a staff member that can deliver that to you, we'll ask you to do that again. As far as the notice for tonight's hearing, this application for March 9th was published in the Idaho Mountain Express in the legal edition, as well as a box ad. It was published on February 22nd, 2017, mailed on March 2nd to surrounding landowners within 300 feet of the external boundaries of this property, as well as to the area determined by the Planning and Zoning Commission for expanded notice. The expanded notice included parcels in East Fork drainage within 300 feet of East Fork Road and adjacent roads, and 6 parcels greater than 300 feet shown on Exhibit C in the materials. The expanded notice was mailed on March 3rd as well. It was also mailed to all political subdivisions on February 21st. On-site posting was posted on March 1st, at least 7 days prior to this hearing, and then the application materials were posted on the Blaine County website as they became available. So that was the extent of the notice for tonight's hearing.
Thanks, Tom. We have a motion to notice adequate. Second.
Second.
And all in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Are there any commission disclosures? And let's start with Rachel and just work this direction.
I have nothing to disclose.
I have nothing to disclose.
I have nothing to disclose.
Thanks, Jim. Yes, I missed the first hearing last month. Wasn't here, and 2 things to disclose. One is I'm a cancer survivor, and second is my wife has property that she leases to Rob Cronin. I don't know exactly his relationship with Camp Rainbow Gold, but I know that he's heavily involved. But that relationship won't have any bearing on my decision making. Thank you.
I have no disclosures.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to turn it back to Tom Bergen, staff, and Tom's going to go over a few things, some comments, information, etc.
There has been additional information submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Commission received an updated staff report that showed the additional information. That staff report is online. We have a couple copies available. We can make more if we need to. I'll kind of run through the additional materials. Since some of that material was submitted within the last couple of days, that'll have a consequence for tonight's hearing and follow-up hearings, and we'll elaborate on that in a moment. But the additional material that was submitted was a PowerPoint presentation that was presented by the applicant on February 9th. There was also a fact sheet, Blaine County Code, conditions of approval, evaluation criteria, and declarations from Perkins Cooley that was submitted on February 2nd, or February 9th as well. A response to objections by Coalition of Concerned Citizens that was received in the Planning and Zoning Office on March 2nd. A letter from Spink Butler, attorneys at law, submitted on March 7th, and that had a couple additional components to it: an East Fork traffic analysis, a response to planning and zoning questions, and proposed conditions of approval, and all those were submitted on the 7th as well. And then a schematic to widen East Fork Road and photos of the 26-foot wide Hyman Creek Bridge were received yesterday on March 8th. We also received from Eggers and Associates an exhibit regarding evergreen trees on the property, proposed evergreen trees, and then architectural renderings of the camp looking south, the proposed camp looking southeast, also the central camp looking southeast, and then the cabin village #1 looking southeast, and then some exterior materials. Those were received, the exterior materials were received on the 9th of February, and the architectural renderings were received on the 2nd, or at least were dated on the 2nd of February. And there was an impact to surrounding wells from Camp Rainbow Gold groundwater pumping by SPG Engineering, received on the 6th of February, and then a traffic impact study that was dated February 2017 that was received on the 7th of February. Also, additional work records from Blaine County Road and Bridge were submitted, and those were labeled as Exhibit B2A. B7D were additional comments from the Blaine County, or the Ketchum Rural Fire District and the county engineer response. And then finally, there were comments from the Ketchum Rural Fire District that were submitted on March 6th. That really is the extent of additional materials that have been sort of added to the record either by the applicant or by agencies. As a result of the receipt of this additional material at such a late date, we will need to have a second or an additional public hearing. There hasn't been time either for the applicants or the public to or staff for that matter, to adequately review that material. As a result, we initially thought about continuing this to a deliberation hearing on next week, the 16th, but that hearing will instead be an additional public hearing. So we're planning to be back here on the 16th for additional public comment in light of the additional material that we received late on this application. So it's somewhat of an announcement to the Planning and Zoning Commission that we would do that, but I think that's necessary in light of the circumstances.
So, and Tom, at that meeting on the 16th, that would be public comment on the new material only, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So, the commission in agreement with this route? Okay, thank you. Tom, do you have anything else?
No, I think that's everything. Thank you.
Okay. And then, have you covered everything on written public comment? It will end, oral public comment will come to a close at the end of that meeting next week on March 16th. And then written public comment, you want to close on Thursday the 23rd, is that correct?
We're maybe going to need to evaluate that a little further, and so at some point during the meeting tonight, we'll kind of announce those follow-up written comment dates. They're also kind of relating to written responses from the applicant, so we'll advise you after we've had a little opportunity to confer about those dates.
Okay, all right, good, thanks. Okay, so at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to the applicant for their presentation this evening.
Chairperson Bailey, Commissioners, it's an honor to be here tonight on behalf of Camp Rainbow Gold. thank you for your time and consideration in advance. What you have on the slide in front of you is our team. I'm sorry, Doug Fowler. And most of whom are here tonight. We have broken our presentation down into 3 sections. The first section will be to address commissioners' questions from the previous meeting. And thank you in advance for providing those questions and giving us time to address them this evening. The second portion will be focused on the standards of evaluation, and the presenter of the answers to the commissioners' questions will be Heath Clark and of Spink Butler, and also he'll be presenting the standards of evaluation along with Buffalo Rickson. We'll then follow lastly and thirdly by our requested conditions of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise. I'm with the law firm of Spink Butler. We have submitted a few documents over the last few days because we, like you, have been drinking from the proverbial fire hose on this one with the number of letters that have come in. And so we wanted to try to address as much as we could. Tom, we're happy with that procedure to allow people to have some additional time to review. So, and we look forward to some additional instruction on how that's going to go. I will go ahead and give it a smooch here. How's that? Okay. All right. So tonight we're going to start out by, as Doug mentioned, by going over some of the questions that we heard at the last hearing. So a few quick hitters here, and then obviously the commissioners should feel free to stop me as we go if you have follow-up questions on any of these items. So one question that we heard was, what is the Camp Rainbow Gold Emergency Telecommunications Plan? There are 3 redundant forms of communication. We'll start out with telephone landlines, and then we will also have cellular access through Verizon, and we've confirmed coverage in that location. And then we also have volunteers who are trained in ham radio operations, and so that will be our 3rd line of communication. We also had a question about the wildfire plan, including the evacuation. We have a 2-step approach. The step 1 is to try to prevent issues in the first place, and that would be by controlling fuels and creating defensible space. We've worked with Mike Pellant at Rangeland Solutions LLC to develop a wildfire mitigation plan that is in your packet. And then second, we've developed the crisis management protocol and the evacuation procedure with sheltering in place contingency. It's quite the mouthful. But in a nutshell, that requires that all of our staff and volunteers be trained on evacuations. It provides for a chain of command. And it also requires that buses be ready for evacuation at all times. Now, one item that we wanted to make sure we pointed out was that the dining hall is ignition resistant and fire sprinklered, so it is prepared with supplies in the event that shelter in place is actually something that will be necessary. The next item was the transportation program and park and ride. The park and ride and transportation program is outlined in the transportation procedures document that is in the application. In a nutshell, the majority of the children will be arriving by bus. Typically, it's 2 buses in, supported by a couple of 1 or 2 passenger vans. Volunteers will be required to carpool, and we will be identifying an off-site park and ride location in coordination with that. And then we will have a transportation director that will enforce these measures. Avalanche study. I believe Commissioner Murphy had asked about this one. An avalanche study is included with our application materials. All buildings are outside the blue and red avalanche zones. But I think, and Buffalo will talk about this a little bit more, but I think it's important to point out that other than the resident caretaker, we don't plan for any winter operations under the permit. And like I said, Buffalo will elaborate on that avalanche study a little bit more. Wetland delineation. The site has been studied by Sawtooth Environmental Consulting LLC. We've provided the county with a preliminary compensatory wetland mitigation strategy as well as a preliminary jurisdictional determination. The wetland delineation will be completed with the oversight of the Army Corps of Engineers, but the Army Corps has already visited the site. Preliminarily, it appears that our consultants' findings are, we anticipate that they will be accurate. We've done as much as we can at this point. We have provided you with the preliminary study. That study shows that the result will be no net loss of wetlands and that we also will be providing for habitat improvements. Our approach is conservative, and by that I mean that the potential jurisdictional wetlands may be reduced. But the CRG plan shows in the end that there will be, as I mentioned, no net loss. So here's the one that I know a lot of people are interested in, which is whether East Fork Road can handle the traffic that's being proposed. East Fork Road at this point has been fairly exhaustively studied on the part of the applicant of 2 sets of traffic engineers. And just to give you some background for what the outcome of those studies looks like, traffic engineers categorize roadways by level of service, A through F. So level of service A is the best, level of service F is, you guessed it, not the best. Most highway districts will conclude that a roadway is within capacity if you're in level of service C or D in many cases. Our traffic studies show the East Fork Road will remain at level of service A during both CRG operation and during the construction phase. But Camp Rainbow Gold is nevertheless going to do the transportation mitigation procedures that we've talked about, including the mandatory voluntary carpooling, and that 90% refers to the number of volunteers that tend to come from outside of the Wood River Valley, but that would apply to all of them. This is from the new study update that HDR provided, and I've been doing land use applications for about 11 years now, and this is a first. This is the first time I've ever seen a traffic study that shows level of service A at every point studied. And I would just add to that matches with the Road and Bridge Department's 5-year needs assessment and maintenance plan from a couple of years ago, where they determined that existing traffic volumes on county roads are low enough that traffic could generally double or triple without significant issues. That's a quote from the report. So next is, will East Fork Road be adequately widened? And the answer is, we have been in discussion since the last hearing with Road and Bridge and with the fire department. Again, capacity is not in question, so widening is really the only question that's in front of us. West of Triumph, the road is paved and has been gradually widened by the Road and Bridge Department. It is less than 20 feet in some locations, but that's been adequate for the county to issue building permits based on the fire department's authority to modify. We've heard from Chief Ellie, and east of Triumph, there are also certain locations that are less than 20 feet, and those are the ones that Chief Ellie wants to see widened. We've looked at that with the Road and Bridge Department and we will be consulting with the county engineer to conduct the widening, but this is prescriptive right-of-way east of Triumph, which means that it's a 50-foot wide right-of-way, so we anticipate that there would be adequate public right-of-way for us to do the widening. And we have proposed a condition of approval that would require us to do that. That should take the IFC argument that's been made a number of times off the table. I also wanted to talk about turnouts. We are willing to explore turnouts. At this point, the direction we've gotten from the county authorities is that they're not necessary. But again, we are willing to work with the county to add them if it turns out that they're needed. Next had to do with some flooding that occurred on East Fork Road a couple of years ago, and whether that would have an impact on the ability of emergency services to access the property. We asked HDR and RLB to look into this further, and this is what they discovered. There was a flood event in 2012 at Hindman Creek. It was due to some beaver dams upstream. Since that time, Road and Bridge has more than tripled the culvert capacity at that location, and they have built up the road. There's been subsequent work on that area. Now, that was the worst situation that we were able to uncover was in 2012. At that point, there was about 1 foot of water on the road, but the road was never closed. There were signs put up, but again, it was not closed. So we anticipate that the improvements to the roadway will be adequate, but if they do not turn out to be adequate, we will have vehicles with adequate clearance. And then remember that we do have the on-site helipad if it turns out that the road is ever not usable. So it's a belt and suspenders approach. We had the question about what happens if emergency service providers can't reach the camp, and that had to do with this indemnity requirement that's been both in the Cove Creek Development Agreement and in documents from the fire district. And it's true that both have requested an indemnity, but there are, in our view, some significant differences. Let me back up and just say, first of all, Camp Rainbow Gold's in no different position than any other residents in the area. So every time a building permit is issued out there, it's the same situation. We're willing to grant the indemnity, just like Cove Creek did in their development agreement, but I think it's important to point out that there's two significant differences here. We're not proposing year-round operations. We're proposing 150 days per year during largely the good weather months. So we don't think that the risk of the emergency service providers not being able to reach the property is as significant. But in any event, we have the helipad as a belt and suspender approach. We also have on-site medical personnel. So the next item was construction traffic. So construction traffic is something that is a side effect of every project, including every building permit that's issued for a residential project. It's a temporary condition. We've looked at it with our traffic engineers. Traffic is not going to exceed the 46 trips a day that is our anticipated maximum traffic at any time during construction operations. East Fork Road will not fall below level of service A during construction, but we will nevertheless offer up mitigation during that time frame, and that includes management of our work teams to coordinate their deliveries. We would also be using builder boxes, which anticipates pre-framed or pre-built structures to also reduce trips. We'd have a staging area to coordinate some of those deliveries. We also have controlled construction hours that align with Blaine County's ordinance. And then we would also be providing for landscape screening and dust abatement. So this is a big one. A number of people have asked about it. And so let me start with a little bit of background and then get into some specifics. Camp Rainbow Gold's initial operations are anticipated to be 4 to 5 weeks per year at the beginning. And it will gradually expand to fill up more of the 150 days that would be allowed under this permit. But in order to help cover some of the maintenance costs, we have proposed to allow third parties that cater to medically fragile children to use the property. Now, we've heard concerns that we haven't been specific enough on this, and I totally understand that. I'm one of the newer consultants on the project, and it's been important to me that we try to give the county more detail on that. So since the last hearing, we've been working on a condition of approval that Doug will provide the text of for you. But here are the highlights. One would be that Camp Rainbow Gold can only be 50% or has to be at least 50% of the actual time used in any given year. Oh, sorry. Second, third-party partners that use the site would be limited to entities providing services for children and their families suffering from health conditions that may include but are not necessarily limited to cancer, autism, or heart disease. And those third-party partners will have to provide only programs that are substantially similar in form and content. And that gets to the question about whether it remains a retreat with these other operators. In addition to that, our resident caretaker would have to be on site, our staff would have to be involved, and all of the Camp Rainbow Gold conditions of approval would have to be strictly adhered to. We're not going to let a partner use our site and put our conditional use permit in jeopardy. So I think that provides answers for the questions that we heard during the last hearing. Obviously, as we go, feel free to ask any follow-ups. But now we want to jump into the standards of evaluation for a conditional use permit under the county code. Standard 1 is whether the use will in fact constitute a conditional use as established for the zoning district involved. And I have a couple of thoughts that I'd like to share before I jump into this, because I think they relate to this question. The first is, I've been doing these hearings for a while across the state, and I have come to appreciate opposition. Opposition is something that helps you make sure that your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, and if it's done right, then it's something that can help you get to a better project. So I want to say that right out of the gate. We respect our neighbors, we respect their opinions, we certainly understand that this is hotly contested. But I do think that a spade should be called a spade when it's appropriate as well. And there have been a number of misrepresentations that have been made about this project throughout the course of these proceedings. And a prime example is the claim that the application includes a massive auditorium with theater seating. That started out as 527 seats. It turned into 589 by this week. The incredible growing auditorium that doesn't actually show on any of our plans. All of our floor plans have been in whenever that claim was made. I respect the counsel for the opposition. He's done a lot of due diligence, and I know that includes reviewing those plans, and so I hope that the county will see the facts for what they are. There's one other issue that's in the opposition's latest reply brief that leads us right into this retreat question. The opposition makes an argument that the county wouldn't even consider an application like this if it came from anyone else other than Camp Rainbow Gold. So the example is that if you'd gotten an application that looked just like this, but it came from Exxon, that you wouldn't even consider it, you'd kick it out immediately. In essence, the claim is that we're trading on our name in order to get some sort of special treatment out of the county. I think it's offensive for a number of reasons. One, first, I think everybody in the county should receive equal treatment. I think we should all be held to the same standards. And so if Exxon puts in a retreat application and it satisfies the CUP standards, then Exxon should get a retreat. But here's the larger point. For strategic reasons, I think he's asking you to ignore who Camp Rainbow Gold is and whom it serves. Don't misunderstand me. Camp Rainbow Gold has to satisfy all the conditional use permit standards. We are not asking you to approve this camp because of who we are and whom we serve, but who we are and whom we serve is absolutely tied into the analysis of whether this constitutes a retreat. So let's look at that question. The definition of a retreat is up on the screen. You've all read it probably more times than you want at this point. Some of the key words there are providing for group withdrawal for prayer, meditation, study, and instruction under a director. Here's, I think, a very important point. There is no box around what is meant by prayer, meditation, and study. There's no restriction to a particular creed, denomination, or therapy technique. Those activities should be given their regular, everyday meaning, and they are not limited to adults in a dark room with yoga mats and candles. The definition of retreat is far broader than that, appropriately so, because it's not the county's place to define what is meant by prayer, meditation, study, and instruction. So what are we proposing? We're proposing a wilderness retreat for kids and families whose spirits and bodies are in need of physical and spiritual healing. We're taking them to a place where kids can commune with nature for activities that include rituals, ceremonies, and memorials for campers, along with education and related activities. Each of these activities are directed by Camp Rainbow Gold staff, i.e. directors, and they are designed to help children and their families cope with facing mortality at far too young an age. As one Camp Rainbow Gold camper put it, the doctors healed my body, Camp Rainbow Gold healed my life. And I don't think we can say this enough. This camp is a wilderness retreat for kids suffering from cancer. Now, I've heard a number of people playing off of the word camp and suggesting that that's somehow an automatic disqualifier. Those terms are not mutually exclusive. I think that's creating an artificial distinction between them. I think, if I'm going to put it simply, camp is a retreat for kids. In addition to that, this proposal does not create precedent, despite what you may have heard a number of times. The first point there is that the commissioners in the county, know exactly what is proposed. You know exactly what the programming is. You know exactly what the buildings look like. We are not proposing a Christian NASCAR camp. And if a Christian NASCAR camp is applied for, you can look at it on its own merits. And then beyond that, county code is very explicit in stating that the grant of one conditional use permit does not set a precedent for a subsequent conditional use permit. Every one of them has to be considered on its own merits. You've survived standard 1, only 9 left to go. So standard 2. This has to do with whether the proposal is harmonious with the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan. So let's start with the comprehensive plan. The application is consistent with a number of the goals in the comprehensive plan. There's preservation of open environment. We've got about 80% of our project in open space. There's preservations of hills and mountains. We're in the mountain overlay district. We propose no hillside development. The wildlife habitat in those areas will be untouched, and the impact of our development should be less than a subdivision and a scattering of residents on the property, because our use is not year-round. We're promoting recreation. In addition to the wilderness retreat nature of the proposal, we've proposed a condition of approval that you'll see when Doug goes through the slides that allows for limited public access easement for recreation purposes. And beyond that, we help to provide, I think, for a balanced and diverse economy in the county. The project will bring in campers and volunteers from across the state. I think it's hard to argue that it wouldn't be a benefit. So that's the comp plan. And as you know, the comp plan is a policy document, right? And it's that policy document that gets translated into the zoning ordinance. For better or for worse, comp plans are sort of a Rorschach, and everyone sees what they want to see in a comp plan. So I fully understand that there are going to be competing opinions on that. So let's talk about the more specific document, which is the zoning ordinance, and let's talk about what's consistent with the RR40. I think it's important to note first that if you look at Blaine County Code, there are categories of zones. The RR40 is not a residential zone, it is a rural and ag zone. So what does that mean? Well, and let me back up. That's appropriate given the purpose statement for RR40, which speaks to the fact that the soils and other characteristics are not appropriate for large-scale agricultural or residential use. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that residential uses don't have pride of place in the RR40. Residential uses are one of a number of permitted uses. They're one of a number of conditionally permitted uses in the zone. The permitted uses include timber production, mining, and grazing, and the conditionally permitted uses include everything from airfields to gravel pits to batch plants and landfills. But keep in mind that a retreat is a conditional use. And I always find that conditional uses have kind of gotten a rep that is a little bit misleading. So keep in mind, a conditional use, contrary to popular belief, does not require a waiver or a modification or ultimately any special permission. What a conditional use does, it's a use that's been pre-identified by the county as being appropriate in the zone, so long as appropriate conditions can be put on it to control its impacts on the neighbors. Because retreats are on the list of conditionally permitted uses, this means the county has already legislatively determined that a retreat, properly conditioned, is consistent with the RR40 zone. So taking this back, I'll make one more point before I hand this off to Buffalo. Taking this back to the zoning categories of rural and ag, it's been stated repeatedly that the RR40 zone is intended to preserve rural areas, and to the extent that's correct. But when it comes, if we take people at their word when it comes to that argument, there are really few uses that can accomplish this goal as well as Camp Rainbow Gold does. Remember, permitted and conditionally permitted uses in the zone include everything from mining and timber production and landfills to gravel pits to batch plants and daycare facilities. Many of these uses will have significantly greater traffic and overall impacts than Camp Rainbow Gold will have. It generates at most 46 trips per day. That's on its busiest day. It's frankly the same as a 4-lot subdivision, which is something that this property could accommodate. Remember, this is not a mall. This is not an office building, even though it keeps being described like one. It doesn't have those kind of impacts. It's a wilderness retreat, and it's 100% consistent with what's intended for the RR40 zone. So with that, I am going to hand you off to Buffalo to cover a couple more of these standards, and then I will circle back to finish this up.
Yes, hello. My name is Buffalo Rickson, 241 East Fork Road. I'm an architect with Cedar Latham Land in Ketchum, Idaho. Thank you, Commissioners and Commissioner Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of Camp Rainbow Gold. Okay, so I'd like to start off by addressing standard evaluation number 3. I'd like to discuss how Camp Rainbow Gold is designed, constructed, operated, and maintained to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with existing or intended character of the general vicinity. We showed this at the last hearing, but I want to start off with a slide to show the context of the property and the surrounding landscape. This is the first entrance to the camp. Up front here is the first cabin in Village 1, some staff housing, and then the central core camp, I'll show you the next slide, is off in the distance here. And the neighboring property is out in the trees that are kind of way out beyond here. And the general camp design involves a central core for camp retreat facilities. It involves cabins for children. There's a cluster of 7 boys' cabins and 7 girl cabins. And there are staff housing in here, a volunteer cabin in here. There's a maintenance facility and a maintenance barn for maintaining the property. And there's the nature study area or structure located on the far west end of the property. The largest building is the dining facility right here. It's 9,560 square feet. And it has a dining room seating area of 198 people. There's a side seating area of about 46 people for smaller and more intimate groups. The second largest building is the Reflection Center, and it is 8,350 square feet with a maximum occupant load of 200 people. And then directly just off to the side of this Reflection Center is an outdoor amphitheater for seating of 200 people maximum. So early in the camp design process here, we identified East Fork River Channel here, with adjacent beaver ponds that are run off of a side channel there. There's also a East Fork irrigation diversion channel that actually is headed off way upstream here about a mile and runs through the properties where head gates filter off and have been used to flood irrigate the property. We originally identified East Fork Creek, the main channel, as being a Class 2 stream with a 50-foot setback. And we had, through the wetland study, we had identified the irrigation diversion channel as a Class 3 stream with a 25-foot setback. So the design here actually has a 25-foot setback off the wetlands. But since then, just recently, we determined with the county that this is actually a Class 2 stream with a 50-foot setback. So in the design, we will be further pushing this one cabin cluster in this portion of the road right here, approximately 20 feet further away from the creek there, which in essence will also help to alleviate some of the burden on the neighboring property here. So the closest cabin here will be approximately 390 feet away from the closest guest house there. Okay, the landscape plan. The main reason why I have this landscape plan up here is to find the lighting, the outdoor lighting. So all the lighting on the property is down lighting that complies with Blaine County ordinances, Blaine County's outdoor lighting ordinance and the dark sky standards. There's exterior down lighting at each of the camp building entrances, doorways. And then there are limited 48-inch tall to 60-inch tall path lighting throughout a portion of the pathways. I believe on the plans that you have, you can probably see this better, but the major pathways linking the buildings with the central core will have these path lighting. All lighting will be down lighting. Included in the next few slides are drawings depicting the character and the scale of the proposed buildings to address some of the misconceptions regarding the camp size of the structures. The architecture is supposed to be simple, rural architecture with a rustic character of the camp buildings to be harmonious with the surrounding area. The buildings are all single-story, and their detached structures are arranged in groups to minimize the scale. This is a view of the girls' cabins. All in all, it's meant to be a camp. Just to quickly go over some of these buildings, I won't belabor this too much here since we went over this a bit last time, but the Welcome Center is 23 feet high and 3,400 square feet. The Health Center is 20 feet high and 3,000 square feet. The dining hall is 23 feet high, 9,560 square feet. It has seating for 198 people. And the Reflection Center is 30 feet high, 8,350 square feet, and has a maximum assembly occupant load of 200 people. Now I also want to point out that this building here is the tallest building on the facility. It's at 30 feet high. The maximum allowed is 35 feet. Barns and other sort of structures can go slightly higher than that. This is the tallest building at 30 feet. And then there's an art shack here at 22 feet high, 3,264 square feet. And these are lead staff cabins, seasonal staff cabins, and volunteer staff cabin, all within 15 to 18 feet high, ranging from 780 square feet to 1,720 square feet. And this building right here is one of the cabins for the 7 girls cabins, 7 boys cabins. Each one's 1,250 square feet, 21 feet high. And then there is a shower house and a nature study building that's 140 square feet. And then to handle on-site maintenance of the property, there's a year-round caretaker's cabin, 1,600 square feet. And then there's a maintenance storage building of 4,200 square feet. So I know Heath talked about the construction management mitigation plan, so I won't go through all of these items item by item. But I think, as is not typical with any other residences or any other projects out in the zoning district here, Camp Rainbow Gold will prepare a final construction management plan that will be submitted to the county prior to any building permits. And it will include such items as requirements for carpooling, limiting the work days, locating on-site construction staging areas, and pre-landscape plantings to help screen that. Standard number 4, Camp Rainbow Gold's proposal will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses. So the surrounding property is zoned RR40 with the same permitted and conditional uses. BLM borders the property to the south and to the north. And private property borders the camp to the east and to the west. There's a residence right here in the southeast corner. There's a residence right here due to the east, and then there are 4 vacant lots out here in the perimeter in Cove Creek, Pioneer Moon and Cove Creek. And then there's additional residents out Hyman Creek, and then 1 more out further out Hyman Creek. So here's just a quick slide that I'm going to show because it references the next slide, which is a comparison slide. So we took a look at the surrounding properties, how many structures were on those properties, and the square footage, and came up with an average of those structures. So you see Somerset and have a total square footage of 17,007 structures, 14,000 square feet, 3 structures, and then there's some other smaller properties that are smaller residences that we factored into that average as well. So if we look at a potential residential development comparison to kind of put those numbers in context, and this is hypothetical, but this is what past Triumph could be developed as. If you take Cove Creek, there's 6 lots in Cove Creek, that includes Pioneer Moon. And if you have an average of 3.2 structures per lot, you would have potential, not even potential, but there may be 19 structures further out Cove Creek. And if you take that average again of 11,330 square feet per lot, that's 67,930 square feet. All the zoning would have a 35-foot maximum height limit out there and 365 days of occupancy. Now with the 19 lots out there, that also translates, or, I'm sorry, 6 lots, but 19 structures, that also translates into an average of 60 vehicle trips daily. And then if you looked at Triumph Ranch to the west, that could be, by the numbers, potentially 17 lots for 54 structures, 192,000 square feet, 365 days a year, and 170 vehicle trips per day, daily average. And then if we looked at the Camp Rainbow Gold property itself and you divided that into 4 lots, you could have possibly 12 structures, 45,000 square feet, and 40 daily vehicle trips per day. Camp Rainbow Gold project has the 1 lot that it is has 28 lots plus the greenhouse, 59,000 square feet. Has an average height of 20 feet, the tallest building being 30 feet, 150 days maximum use, 31 weekday average traffic trips, 21 weekend trips. And any given day, I think there's only 2 days, I believe, is maximum of 46 trips per day, or all not 1 day. And then the construction duration is also phased short term, which is unknown for any of the other future developed residential. I also wanted to point out that when we look at septic fields, Camp Rainbow Gold has 2 septic fields. There's 2 drain fields, one is a replacement field. Just like any house usually has 1 drain field and then 1 replacement field. And so the system here, we can get into this a little bit later with our consultants, but those 2 drain fields are alternating. It's a large soil absorption system, so it has much greater restrictions than a typical residential system. So as I pointed out before in the landscape plan, we've included landscape buffering where appropriate to East Fork Road itself, and then also sensitivity to the neighbors to the southeast. We have a note on here too that any landscape in this area can be certainly coordinated with the neighbor to even enhance and further provide more buffering. And with the shift of these cabins here, we'll be about 390 square feet to the closest guest house in this corner here. Noise mitigation. So Camp Rainbow Gold proposes the following noise mitigation policies. No outdoor amplified PA systems, no amplified enunciators distributed throughout camp, non-amplified central camp bell and handheld radios for emergency purposes and assembly. Any large outdoor camp activities will be limited to the hours of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then all maintenance and construction activities shall also be coordinated with Blaine County and also limited in accordance with Blaine County hours of construction. Standard 5. Camp Rainbow Gold's proposal will be adequately served by essential public facilities and services, such as highways, streets, emergency services, etc. So as it stands now, East Fork Road between Triumph and the property is currently between 16 and 36 feet wide. This portion of the road will be widened as a condition of this project to 20 feet. So I know it's a little tough to see on the screen right here, but in your packets you also have this drawing that has recently been submitted, but they're within the 50-foot right-of-way. There are identified areas of road improvement shown here in red. Most of the road is within 20 to 23 feet. There are some sections that are 16 feet. I've met with County Road and Bridge, Blaine County Road and Bridge, and we've looked at these areas, and these are the areas that can be easily widened. Emergency management and evacuation. So the evacuation plan is based on the Ready, Set, Go system and will comply with the International Fire Code. Wildfire evacuation goes into action when the fire is within 20 miles. That's the prep time. Evacuation actually happens when a wildfire is within 10 miles. If there's a fire that happens more locally and say a sagebrush fire and crossing East Fork Road, or for any other reason the road is not passable, the dining hall is designed as a shelter in place. The exterior materials are ignition resistant, it's fire sprinkler, has green defensible spaces all around it. We also have a wildfire hazard reduction plan. It has 8 points of mitigation that we're proposing for the project, such as maintain fuels in the currently irrigated area up in this pond area, because that's the west entrance to the camp. We'd like to protect that. Reducing fuels along East Fork Road. The existing pond can be used as a water source. The irrigation will be maintained in the existing pasture land here, where this has been flood irrigated, and this was previously flood irrigated. We'll have a pressurized sprinkler system there to maintain those pasture lands, green space. And we also have, we'll have cisterns on the property throughout, as required by the Ketchum Rural Fire District. And there will also be portable fire extinguishers distributed throughout camp for outdoor activities. Avalanche. Although the camp is not proposed to be utilized in the winter, the camp buildings still have to be designed as per the avalanche study. So the avalanche study that we've had done by Alpine Enterprises is based on a 300-year design period. And so what you're seeing here is the blue line, which is basically, that's where it goes from avalanche loads, risk of avalanche to no risk of avalanche. There's a red zone in here, which is typically defined by 600 pounds per square foot. That's a high hazard area. And so these avalanche lines, like I said, are based on a 300-year return period. Typically, Amherst County standards, we use a 100-year return period. So this is a conservative avalanche study for this project. All buildings on the project are well outside any blue avalanche zones. We have a bridge down in here, which is a pedestrian bridge to access some trails up this canyon here. A bridge of that sort, pedestrian, would typically be designed for a 30-year return period. And so what that would really does is this blue line now moves to the red line, and that bridge would be outside of it. But regardless, the bridge would always be designed to a site-specific avalanche study for that area, especially since it's located in close proximity to the river, crossing the river with flood zone. At this point, I'd like to turn it back over to Heath to take on Standard 6. Thank you for your time.
For the record, Heath Clark, and I'll try to take us home on these standards. So Standard 6 has to do with whether the project will create excessive additional requirements at public cost for public facilities and services and will not be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community. So I think it's important first to point out that the question is not whether it will have any additional requirements at public cost, but it's whether they will be excessive. So what are the public costs? If you look at this project, the only categories that one could think of would first be the roads. We've already talked about the fact that East Fork Road is within the level of service A, and that Camp Rainbow Gold will undertake the widening at its cost. Another public cost that would be on that potential list would be emergency service providers. We have satisfied the emergency service providers at this point, and we don't anticipate any further costs there. And then finally, water and wastewater are often on that list, but remember, these are private water and wastewater systems. We're going to talk about them more in a little bit, but they don't actually fall within this Standard 6, which focuses on whether they're provided at public cost. So the follow-up question is whether it's detrimental to the economic welfare of the community. And remember, that factor is not the immediate community, it's the community. The question is not whether this is going to generate economic growth. The question is whether it's going to be detrimental. And there's no common sense reason why that would be the case when you're talking about $20 million of investment in a property to accommodate visitors coming in from across the state. You can see the benefits that would be coming to the entirety of the county as a result of that. Now, I know that the opposition has presented some information with regard to the impact on property values in the immediate vicinity. We disagree with those conclusions. The analysis was not done in accordance with standard appraisal techniques, and you'll see in your packet some commentary from an appraiser on that analysis. But again, the larger point is not whether one property suffers a negative or a decrease in property value. Again, we don't believe that that will be the case. But the question is whether there's an economic detriment to the community, and we see no evidence that that would be true. So Standard 7, this is the long one, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. But this has to do with whether there will be activities and conditions that will be detrimental. And the important word there is by excessive production of traffic, noise, water pollution, etc. So starting with traffic, again, East Fork Road is within level of service A, so it's not excessive. And then our construction plans include dust control. We've already talked to you about the noise mitigation that we've proposed. We don't see that as being excessive as well, and we don't anticipate any smoke, fumes, glares, odors, or vibration. So clicking down the list, about the only thing that's possibly left would be the water pollution component of this. Water's been exhaustively studied by SPF. Their review shows that adequate water is available. And remember that this factor, oops, I skipped ahead, sorry about that. Remember, this factor focuses on water pollution and not water rights, which are administered by IDWR, not the county. But we have reviewed the water situation and determined that our daily use will be 10,000 gallons per day. That is within the 13,000 gallon per day domestic use exception. But I think it's also important to keep in mind that this use is non-consumptive. And by that I mean that it comes out of the ground, it goes into our system, and goes back into the ground. So I think that's an important part about all of this and its effect on, or the alleged effect on the aquifers. And we have our consultants here from SPF to talk about that if there are any follow-up questions. When it comes to wastewater, we've done what the county requires and what case law requires. We've prepared an analysis and a conceptual wastewater system design that calls for a large soil absorption system, or an LSAS. We've been to the site, we've done test pits, we've identified that the soils are suitable for an LSAS system. And one thing that we want to make sure that people understand is that LSAS is in many ways superior to a standard septic field. It requires far more oversight, including a level 1 nutrient pathogen study and DEQ review. And then functionally, it is pressurized, which means that its distribution works through the system and you don't have areas where the waste might pool. We do have redundant and alternating drain fields. And then if there are any questions, and then in addition to that, we have better separation as compared to septic. And that's the kind of technical stuff that I get really nervous talking about. So if there are other questions about that, we do have our consultants here. South Central Public Health District has reviewed the preliminary system, and they've indicated in a letter that is in your packet that this does meet applicable rules and guidance. Standard 8. Will the proposal have vehicular approaches that create an interference with traffic on surrounding public thoroughfares? It's an easy one. Again, area roads are at level of service A, and there are no dimensional constraints on our approaches. Standard 9. This has to do with whether the application will result in the destruction, loss, or damage of natural, scenic, or historic features, and it's of major importance. That's another one to keep in mind. This application, like every development application, like every residence, is going to have some impact on wildlife. And we understand the comments on that, and we've tried to take that to heart. But I think there are a few things that people ought to keep in mind when you compare this and the impact on wildlife. First, 80% of the project is left in open space. And again, we have no development of the hillside wintering range and no winter operations. And in addition to that, the wetlands habitat will be improved. Standard 10, we lucked out, doesn't apply to us because we're not a state agency. So with that, to take us home, Doug is going to talk to us about the proposed conditions of approval, which will be displayed on the screen. And then again, these are in your packet for you to review as well.
Thank you for the record, Doug Fowler. We work very hard in working with neighbors, staff, and commissioners to find a way to make things work, and we'll continue to do that. One of the things that you have in front of you right now, in the staff report, it was the applicant shall obtain the first building permit within 1 year of the date of findings of fact, decision, and conditions, or the approvals contained herein shall be null and void. We would like to request 3 years for that. Our proposed conditions of approval, the applicant shall obtain all necessary local, state, and federal permits associated with the project prior to commencement of retreat activities under this permit. Number 2, development of the project will be in substantial conformance with the plans and specifications submitted to the Blaine County Land Use Department dated January 9, 2017. Number 3, In consultation with Blaine County Road and Bridge Maintenance Department and the county engineer, the applicant will widen East Fork Road east of Triumph to 20 feet wide prior to the commencement of site disturbing construction activities and where adequate public right-of-way exists. Number 4, use of the site shall be limited to 150 days per year, May through October. No winter operations are permitted under this permit other than the full-time resident caretaker. Number 5, use of the site by third parties shall be limited to entities providing services for children and their families suffering from health conditions that may include but are not necessarily limited to cancer, autism, or heart disease. Use by third parties shall be limited to no more than 50% of the actual days used in any given year. Any such use of the site by third parties will require on-site supervision by the applicant and the staffing by applicant employees and staff. Use of the site by third parties will be subject to all of the terms and conditions identified in this approval. A copy of the form lease agreement by which the site will be leased to any third party will be provided to Blaine County Land Use Department for their review. All such programs shall be substantially similar in form and content to those proposed by the applicant and described in the applicant's application materials. I've worked with Heath long enough, he knows I can't talk and listen at the same time. This was added to the materials in your packet based on recent information. Number 6, final review and approval of the domestic water and wastewater treatment systems from all applicable regulatory agencies, including Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, South Central Public Health District, and Idaho Department of Water Resources will be required prior to commencement of operation of the retreat. Number 7, the applicant will adhere to the terms and conditions identified in the following correspondence from agencies and county officials. December 29, 2016 email from Jeff Loomis, PE, Blaine County Engineer, with the exception of the recommendation that the 12-foot trail be expanded to 20 feet wide. November 1, 2016 correspondence from Idaho Department of Water Resources. November 8, 2016 correspondence from Idaho Department of Fish and Game, with the exception of the restriction on vegetation clearing to the extent called for in the applicant's wildfire mitigation plan. January 11, 2017, January 24, 2017, and March 2, 2017 correspondence from Ketchum Rural Fire District Chief Mike Ellie, and December 15, 2016 correspondence from South Central Public Health District. Number 8, all outdoor lighting shall comply with Title IX, Chapter 29A of Blaine County Code. Number 9, noise mitigation shall include the following requirements. No outdoor amplified system shall be used for general public announcements. Number 2, no amplified enunciator shall be distributed throughout the camp other than emergencies. 3, non-amplified central camp bell and handheld radios shall be used for assembly and emergency assembly purposes. 4, large outdoor group camp activities shall be limited to the hours of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And 5, all maintenance and construction activities shall be limited to the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturday, and 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Sunday, in accordance with Blaine County hours of construction. Number 10, the applicant will adhere to the conditions identified in the Camp Rainbow Gold Wildfire Mitigation Plan dated September 28, 2016, and on file with the Blaine County Land Use Department. Number 11, the applicant will adhere to the conditions identified in the memorandum dated March 7, 2017 by HDR Engineering related to traffic and roadway mitigation. Number 12, a 10-foot public access easement to the East Fork of the Big Wood River will be provided when camp is not in session, subject to reasonable restrictions. We humbly and sincerely ask for your help in moving this project forward. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point in time, we're going to take, we don't have a lot of time, but I'm looking at my clock. We started, I think, about 8 minutes late. We're going to go to, open it up to questions from commissioners to the applicant. And I would say that we've got 20 minutes, and there's 5 of you who will ask questions on the wall. So if you try and hold it to about 4 minutes, then that'll keep us on schedule. And it would be between the commissioner asking the question and or the applicant, depending on the question, if you want to answer it this evening, or if you want to answer that via staff by next Thursday, the 16th. So, and then commissioners, if you have any questions that you do not get in tonight, please get them to the applicant via staff next Monday the 13th. So with that, William, I'm just going to start down at your end and go this direction.
I can probably write down most of my questions because they deal with numbers. I'm having a hard time determining how many people are going to be at a camp for 7 days. How many people? For example, the dining pavilion or dining building, it has a dining room seat main area that has 198 people with seating. There's a private dining room to the north of the main dining room, and from what I was able to pull off the big plans, I have a copy of the really big ones. The total seating is 246. Okay. I've gone through all of the buildings that have beds, and I can see in one staff building there's 4 doors, 4 beds. Seasonal staff building, 8 beds, 4 female, 4 male. Lead staff building, 8 beds, 4 queen, what appears to be 4 bunk beds. Our bunk beds, 2 beds in addition. Gone through the cabins, 14 of them. It appears that there are 4 bunks and 4 beds for a total of 12 beds per cabin. That shows that there's 168 beds total. Staff house, 2 bedrooms. Now, one of the examples in your general information said that I believe your most recent 7-day large camp had 80 campers, and that there were 75 volunteers. That's a total of 155. I also read that you have a desire to increase the size of these large camps from between 120 to 150 campers. Now, I've heard discussions about campers and their family members, and nowhere is it defined if the members of the family constitute campers, or whether they're included in the total of the volunteers, okay? Now, if there's 120 campers, the ratio of camp volunteers to campers is 0.9375. So that's practically one volunteer per camper. And I can't tell if which one of these categories includes the family members. If the camp goes up to a size of 150, with the ratio of volunteers to campers, you're going to have 290 people. Now, I want you to be able to tell us how many more people are going to be included in this that are staffers, because you're proposing a very large operation that you've never had to deal with before. And in order to be able to, like, I'll write them down.
Elizabeth Lisberg, for the record, Executive Director of Camp Emerald Gold. I feel like I could clarify some of that for you pretty quick. We have several different types of camp that you referenced. We have the weeks that are just the campers with volunteers, and then we have family camps. And yes, we count the family members, adults, as campers. So where we want to grow, we currently have our largest camps is our sibling camp. It has 80 campers and 70 volunteers. It's at its maximum capacity. We want to add another week that would mirror that. It would be 80 campers and 70 volunteers. That is not including on-site staff. On-site staff would be the site manager, likely a kitchen manager, and between 4 to 6 other staff members to help support the facilities. That does not include the Camp Rainbow Gold staff, our program manager and program director. So I'm being told to wrap up. The last thing would be that the family camps, that is where we want to grow. They're at maximum capacity as well. We want to bring more families and have designed the cabins to handle that capacity growth.
Thank you. So,
Right to you.
yes, sir. Can you hear me now? So you've got about 8 people on staff, full-time, approximately.
Correct, we would. That would be
Okay.
new positions.
Thank you. Couple quick questions. The emergency policies that you have proposed, and I assume that those are current policies that you have at your current operation. One of the concerns that I have, having gone through treatment, is I'm not concerned about kids or their parents burning up. We've been through a fire, and the problem is smoke inhalation. And I didn't see anything that addressed that at all with regard to having oxygen or, I mean, there were particle masks, but it seems to me that air is critical in the type of fires that we've had. And I don't know what experiences you had in our last 2 fires, whether you had to evacuate the premises or what you did. Regarding wetlands, Trent, when you get a chance, could you talk about or address the hydrological impacts of a road that crosses wetlands? There have been a number of comments about the roads blocking the flows of the wetlands. And it's my understanding of my knowledge of wetlands. You can answer this later next week in writing. It's not that critical, but I'd like it expressed. Finally, the challenge that I have for the use within this zone is that when you look at daycare, there's an entire section. It limits the number of kids to 12. A retreat has a paragraph. And the problem that I'm having is that permitted uses are a residence and an accessory dwelling. RR40, because it's rural and remote, is necessarily restricted and limited to its intended usage. Within the A40, RR40 came from A10 in very remote areas. A40 came from A20 in the down zone that we had a few years, 10 years back. My question is, I don't see how employee housing fits, where it fits as a conditional use, as an accessory use. When I looked at the type of units that are permitted in the A40, it talks about employee housing. It doesn't say anything about having employee housing in RR40, and I think that's on purpose. Same thing in the A20 zone. So you can look at section 9-5A-5 accessory uses in A40, 9-5-5 in A20. It's restricted in those zones. It's not expressed at all in RR40. Thank you.
Commissioner Fosbury, if I could, we will save 2 of your 3 questions till next time, but Trent will not be here for our next hearing. So if we could just ask for the commissioners to allow him to just respond real quickly to your question, we can knock that out real quickly, and then again, try to conserve time for the rest of it.
Trent Stump, Sawtooth Environmental Consulting, for the record. Dick, to address your questions, the camp has gone to extreme lengths to limit any potential impacts to the wetlands. The area for the roadway and the trails are under further study to see if they actually qualify for jurisdictional status. Even if they do qualify, there are ways to mitigate some of the subsurface flow that goes through that area with your road base, large aggregate on the very bottom course would allow flow through, and then culverts placed in the appropriate locations if you ever had surface water in there. So I don't see it in that particular case as being a huge impact of potentially impounding things up or impeding that flow through. And that particular area, that is potential jurisdictional. We do have shallow water, groundwater monitoring wells in position now, and we will take a look at that this spring and summer during the wet season to actually verify, where the groundwater elevations are, and the design would be to able to incorporate whatever is necessary to try to maintain a hydrologic connection in that area.
No questions.
Yeah, I just have one question on the East Fork Road. You stated that you would meet the fire department's requirement for 20 foot where the easement was sufficient. Now, there's areas along that road that may or may not be able to be widened to 20 feet. I'm just wondering if that's been surveyed, where you're not going to be approaching into wetlands or into private, because I'm not really clear that the entire distance that you're looking at east of Triumph is actually lends itself to be widened to 20 feet. If not, would you want to get some sort of qualification from Ketchum Fire Department on that?
Yes, hello, my name is Bob Ulrichsen. There are a few sections where East Fork Road is quite close to the creek there. And so within a 25, so there's a prescriptive easement, it would be centered on the existing road. So for instance, where you have a 16-foot road, out of that 25 feet off the center line there, take out the 8 feet of the 16-foot road, that gives you approximately 17 feet to make up that extra 4 feet of space that you need to get that road out to 20 feet. So no, the question is no, we have not had that surveyed yet. That would have to take further analysis. But talking with county, road and bridge, it definitely looks feasible. Thank you.
Okay, so you address, when talking about the dining hall, you say that you're using ignition-resistant materials. I guess I'd like clarification on what exactly ignition-resistant materials are. And then also for Trent, several times, well, a couple times you say that the wetland habitat will be improved. How will the wetland habitat be improved?
Well, with regards to improved, I'm not sure if I've actually said improved. We are a mitigation plan in place that will offset any of the proposed impacts on a 1-to-1, 1 to 1.1, so we can actually create more wetland situation. With regards to improving the wet meadow area that's potentially jurisdictional, that we would have to permit for the roadway and the trail, I would say that we wouldn't impact it to a point where it degrade the wetland resources, the greater wetland resources on the property. Again, the plan has taken a lot of care in protecting, the truly functional wetlands of the East Fork. All those lowland areas in the county code actually works really well to help protect those areas. I would say that we're not going to have a detrimental effect on the wetlands with regards to the proposed mitigation plan.
To answer your question regarding ignition-resistant materials, so what that is, typically with the 50-foot clear space or a defensible space around it, you would normally use a Class 2 ignition-resistant materials. We're going to use, with consultation with Mike Ellie and Tom Ancona, fire chiefs, we're going to go with a Class 1 ignition-resistant material. So for the siding, it's a composite material. It's a wood grain, wood stain composite material. Class 1, we also, any sort of metal siding that we have stone veneer wainscots in certain restricted, limited areas. Those are Class 1 ignition-resistant materials. Heavy timbers are also Class 1 ignition materials, meaning like, for the deck and the trusses of the roofs, anything over a certain dimension of timber is a Class 1 ignition resistant. So it'll be a combination of composite materials, wood grain composite materials, and heavy timber, and then a Class A roof.
Okay, does heavy timber have to be treated to be Class 1?
No, it just has to be a certain dimension.
Okay, so also, wait, don't leave yet. So I couldn't find anything, so you mentioned cisterns, but I couldn't find anything about how many, where they would be. Have you?
Yes, we've actually worked with Fire Chief Mike Ellie and Fire Marshal Tom Ancona, and we have located 4 either fire hydrants or cisterns, depending on cost. But they are shown in the site plan. There's one by the Girls Cabins Village. There's, I believe, one by the Reflection Center, one a little further to the north, the dining hall, and then another one out towards the kind of the boys' cabins.
Okay, great. And then the one other thing that doesn't necessarily need to be addressed now, but I was wondering, Fish and Game addresses pets and how to take care of pets. And I want to know if you plan to have any pets on site really at any time. And I mean, even the people who live on site year-round, will they be allowed to have pets? And will you have mitigation for possible issues with pets?
We do not allow pets. The only pets that would come on are pet therapy, and they come 1 day a week during camp.
Are there going to be any gates? No gates?
Yeah, I'm sorry. No gates are proposed. There is a overhead monument pass-through at both camp entrances, but there are no gates proposed. There is fencing, which is wildlife-friendly fencing that we worked out with Idaho Fish and Game.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. At this time, we're going to take a break for 10 minutes. Us and everybody in the room take their business, etc. And when we come back, we will get into public comment. So we'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, I think if we could all take a seat, please, we'll get things rolling here again. Okay, would everybody please sit down and we can get out of here sometime before midnight. Okay, we're now going to enter into the public comment portion of tonight's meeting. And just to reiterate once again, we will also be meeting, we'll have a public hearing next Thursday here, same time, 6:30 on March 16th, for the purpose of public comment on the new materials that were submitted tonight. And that will only be public comment on those new materials. So this evening is on everything that's been applied in the application so far. So with the time that we have, and what we're going to do, first of all, is, because there's probably some of you that maybe weren't here before, as you notice, the room, there's two lecterns. One is pro, one is con. Con meaning that you're against the project, pro meaning you're in favor of the project, and then I am going to, we have more people who want to speak than we have time for tonight. What we have time for tonight, and we want to do the same number. We have time for 12 con speakers and 12 pro speakers. And we also want to give opportunity for those who have not yet spoken. So persons who spoke on the February 9th meeting will not be allowed to speak tonight, please. And so I'm going to choose the con speakers first. I'm going to choose 12. So would everybody who wants to speak against the project, please stand up, and I am going to randomly choose 12 of you. When I choose you, please state your name and then come down and take one of these seats that's over here that is marked reserved. Okay, so first I'm going to take this man here in the kind of leather-looking jacket. Your name, please? Thank you. And I'm going to take the woman who has the brown and dark polka dot sweater. And the woman toward the back who has a green sweater. Yes, you.
Judy Harrison.
And this gentleman with the kind of tan colored vest and the white sleeves. And I'm going to take this man in the black sweater. Are those of you that are standing in the aisle standing to be speakers?
We're just observers, Joe.
Pardon?
We're just observing.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take the man all the way in the back with the long coat. And the person over here with the white sweatshirt with something blue on the front. Or you're not standing, okay. That's yeah, last person's name for the record, please. Thank you, Nick. And I'm going to take the woman in the green sweater and the kind of scarf. Name, please. And I'll take this gentleman in the kind of green colored short sleeve shirt, yes. And the woman in the kind of pumpkin orange sweater. And this gentleman right here in the front with the plaid shirt. Okay. And the woman on the aisle in the blue printed shirt. The gentleman in the brown, yes. Okay, we're good. There's 12 on the con. If those speakers not chosen would sit down, and you still have next week, although the subject matter is a little different, and you do still have opportunity for written comment up until, I believe, the 23rd of March. Is that right, Tom? 21st of March for written. So if all persons who wish to speak in favor of the project would please stand up. And I'll take the woman in the red sweater. And I'll take the other woman in the red striped sweater in the back. And the gentleman in the blue down jacket. And the gentleman in the sport coat and the blue shirt. And in the blue, kind of dark blue, small plaid shirt here toward the front. There, so yeah, yes. And the gentleman who just moved out to let Bob get out in the blue fleece, I guess. The woman here in the blue in the front. And the gentleman in the gray sweater over toward this side. Ray Davis. And the gentleman in the back.
Scott Curtis.
The woman in the middle of this group of three people with the, yeah.
Jennifer Kara.
And the gentleman in the dress shirt here by the aisle, yes.
Steve Burns?
And the woman over here with the scarf. Okay, so that's 12. Thank you very much. And so, just to briefly review, this is a 3-minute limit. You'll see that clocked up here on the screen, and that should okay, apparently, yeah, come on down.
Never mind.
I'm sorry, hang on, please, stop.
We have 12.
How many do you have here? Without this man, how many do you have?
Somebody took a toilet break.
Okay, sorry, sir, I had a little misinformation
Oh,
from staff here.
it's okay.
So, here's your clock, and that will beep at you when you get to the end. If you don't happen to, I will remind you that your time will be over. Please state your name and go ahead.
My name is Chuck Christopher. When you look at all the submitted materials Camp Rainbow Gold has given us, it is obvious they are not a religious organization, and they do not use any conventional prayer or meditation within their program. They only give us new meanings for prayer and meditation. They do not align themselves with any conventional religion. They do not have a religious director. If they filed their nonprofit 501(c) status as a religious organization, we wouldn't be having the discussion about the meaning of retreat. The last sentence in Blaine County's definition of retreat says, accommodations cannot be used for the general tourist trade, quasi-motel, or resort. With the number of buildings and the layout of the buildings, this application looks like a resort on paper. Everything is self-contained and everything takes place on the property. In the 6-month calendar they submitted, it says they have 32 days of Camp Rainbow Gold Camp with 11 possible days of expanded camp. There are also 107 days of third-party rental camp. Those numbers show the rental camps are 71% of the overall use. And with that much rental activity, this becomes the primary use of the application. This evening, Camp Rainbow Gold has told us that they will rent it out the same number of days that they use it themselves. So they're proposing a 50-50 deal. The calendar at this point doesn't have any meaning. This contradicts their calendar. So the only thing in the calendar left is they have 32 days of Camp Rainbow Gold Camp, and there are 365 days in each year. With over 300 days sitting empty, they will figure out how to rent it. Whether it's a partnership, donation, some sort of legal terminology, will find a way to rent this facility. This week, CRG says they will widen the dirt road. The dirt road has never been engineered, has no foundation to support the loads the International Fire Code calls for. Jeff Loomis says in his agency comments, the dirt road was just accepted into the county's system in the condition it was in. Simply widening the road is not enough. This road needs a purpose-built. It's never been built as a road. The 5 miles of old pavement that leads into Tryon is not 20 feet wide. Both the surveys that were done on the road show that this road is not 20 feet wide. The condition of that old section of pavement will fail, and the county will be stuck with the cost of that road. There's no way around it if this facility is built. Thanks. Do not approve this.
Thank you. Just to note, these microphones are a little abnormal. You need to get your mouth right next to them. There's a staff person there if you need help adjusting that. But in order to go over the VA system, you have to be really, really close. So go ahead on the pro side. State your name, please.
My name is Sally McCollum. Thank you for letting me speak. My physical address is 171 West 1st Street in Ketchum. I'm a clinical psychologist and a 46-year resident of the Wood River Valley. I attended one of the community meetings in which Camp Rainbow Gold presented their plans for retreat in East Fork, and I've also read several of the letters and documents supporting and opposing the camp. Several of those opposed are good friends of mine, and I'm sorry to be disagreeing with them. The fact that those objecting to the camp hired an attorney to argue their case has given this process an adversarial quality simply because that's the essential nature of the legal system. For example, at the community meeting, I was impressed by the statements of several experts, as I was tonight, about the camp's plans, but many people seemed intent on disputing whatever the experts said. While they all claim to support the camp's mission, they seem to feel their role is only to fight it without considering solutions that could benefit the children, local residents, and all concerned. I truly hope that this adversarial atmosphere does not create undue animosity in our community. I'm thrilled that an organization such as Camp Rainbow Gold exists to make a summer experience possible for severely ill children. There's a debate about whether the camp qualifies as a retreat. One thing to keep in mind is that certain terms when applied to adults have different meanings when applied to children. While some adults may imagine a retreat to be something like a silent monastery, for example, this would not serve as a retreat for kids. I've worked with ill and grieving children, and they need a range of activities to study and withdraw to experience their feelings. They don't stay focused on painful emotions for extended periods, but tend to cycle back around to them periodically. It's appropriate that a retreat for ill children have opportunities for a wide range of activities. I've built a house up here and I know the construction of the kind of homes allowed in the area would dwarf the activity required to build the rustic one-story buildings planned for this camp. Considering that things like animal grazing and a gravel pit would be allowed uses of the property in question, I can hardly imagine a use that would be more benign or have less impact or be more likely to preserve and protect the natural features and beauty of the area than this retreat for children. I enthusiastically support Camp Rainbow Gold applications, their application, and I urge its approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Conside, please.
I'm Lily Simpson, 7 Quigley Lane in Blaine County. I think it might be helpful for the proponents of Camp Rainbow Gold to understand what's behind Blaine County's comprehensive plan and zoning code. These cutting-edge tools are designed for a place so special that residents feel driven to protect its rural character, clean water, clean air, and healthy living. Our planning process allows creation of a community vision, goals, and strategies to make land use decisions for the future. Each zoning district is in accordance with the Blaine County Comp Plan pursuant to Idaho Code. Blaine County land use planning decisions protect and enhance our priceless natural community assets through careful regulation. Zoning separates incompatible uses and protects the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. It protects our undeveloped hillsides, precious water resources, wildlife, and open space. For over 15 years, I've watched as Blaine County land use staff, planning and zoning commissioners, and county commissioners work thousands of hours on land use considerations. They've held countless public hearings on the comp plan and crafted zoning ordinances. Committed to transparency, they support public process and balance Blaine County's economic viability while protecting its special places. In 2005, rapid growth encouraged a planning effort called Blaine County 2025. It produced amendments to ordinances and the comp plan in order to protect sensitive lands, agriculture, and to guide residential and commercial growth toward existing cities. The low-density rural remote 40 zone was created to maintain the character of remote and rural land. It evolved from the A10 zone, which allowed a density of 1 single-family unit per 10 acres. It would follow that the rural remote 40 zone would thus have a residential density of 4 single-family units per 40 acres. The density and the number of people proposed by Camp Rainbow Gold is far greater. Ironically, the property that Camp Rainbow Gold is considering would not have the pristine qualities and the unique natural setting if Blaine County had not limited development and density in this zone. This area is the gateway to some of Idaho's highest peaks and most pristine mountain settings. Driving the dirt road is a treasured journey for visitors and residents because it feels remote, sparsely populated, and wild. The long and growing list of proposed conditions is an indication that this location is not well suited for this conditional use permit. Wouldn't Rainbow Gold be happier with an area where kids could run free and holler and shoot off fireworks and had easier access and more options for their operation? How are these conditions going to be followed for years and years in the future? This application is not in harmony with the character of the neighborhood, and it challenges the purposes and definitions of all our 40 properties in the county on which their owners depend. It is not harmonious with surrounding residential and residential recreational uses, and not in accordance with a comprehensive plan. I don't have a dog in this fight, but I support Blaine County's effort to do the best planning that they can. Thank you.
Thank you. Pro side, please.
Jamie Ribbetts. I reside at 607 Woodward Drive in Ketchum. First and foremost, thank you, Blaine County Planning and Zoning Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak. I'm a mother. I was a 6-year director and assistant director of Camp Rainbow Gold, as well as a 16-year volunteer. I am also a small business owner in Blaine County, and I've lived in the county for over 10 years. I'd like to speak today regarding some of the standards of evaluation on the CUP. First and foremost, the development of Blaine County is inevitable. Look at the Limelight Hotel or the Starbucks at the Visitor Center. Both were a source of contention in our community. Go to either business location on a weekend and they're flourishing and the community is reaping its benefits. We talk about and boast of having the first ski lift in North America, something our community is proud of. Giving Camp Rainbow Gold a permanent home in our community would be something that we could be proud of in Blaine County. Secondly, the standards of evaluation talk about the impact on the community and the surroundings. I hear the opposition talk a lot about impact in a negative manner. What about the impact in a positive manner of having this in your backyard? As a mother, I look forward to the day that my daughter can volunteer at Camp Rainbow Gold. And I can only imagine the impact that having Camp Rainbow Gold in your backyard would have on your children. Much of the opposition's talked about growing their children in the isolation of the East Fork Canyon. What about the impact this will have on their children in a positive way? Watching the campers make a pilgrimage to camp every summer and seeing firsthand the memories and the stories unfold. That's impact you can't buy, sell, or recreate. And as a parent, I would want that for my child. I know firsthand what that impact is like, and I can tell you and assure you it has changed my life drastically. I've traveled the world and lived in other places, and I've never experienced the impact that I've had at Camp Rainbow Gold. I think the impact it could have on the community would be positive. I also want to speak regarding the size and the scope of some of the structures in the building in the plan. Why would we build an 8,300 square foot reflection center if our intentionality was to only keep it to 200 people? Well, I'll tell you why. As a director, 1 year at camp, our entire outdoor activities were canceled due to thunder and lightning. And I can assure you there's so many rounds of Battleship you can play before you run out of things to do indoors. Having a large reflection center would allow us to have a library, a music studio, and an area to bring the children indoor when needed. And lastly, I've never lived in the East Fork Canyon, but I've attended all of the meetings, read all the letters online, and done my due diligence. And I can speak to the integrity of Camp Rainbow Gold as an organization. They're genuine and honest, and they've conducted themselves in Blaine County for the past 25 years with integrity. With approval of this permit, they will continue to do so. Please, I urge you, please approve this conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Conside, please.
Judy Harrison, Haley, Idaho. As a former Blaine County Planning and Zoning Commissioner, a word of caution. The application for this CUP should be judged on the standards of evaluation, not on the emotional appeal of this special needs group. I will speak to Standard 5, will be adequately served by essential public services, etc. In Exhibit B7A from Mike L. Ketchum Fire Department dated 11/17/16, page 2, paragraph 3, he states that the fire department will require Camp Rainbow Gold to indemnify, hold harmless all local government agencies in case they cannot get there for whatever reason. In Exhibit B7E, a letter dated 3/2/17, he states the gravel portion of East Fork Road beyond Triumph does not meet the 2012 International Fire Code Section 503 or Appendix D and does not meet Blaine County Code Chapter 7 requirements for a fire apparatus road. And improvements to the road beyond Triumph will be required. In Exhibit B1, dated 12/29/16, page 5, County Engineer Jeff Loomis states that East Fork Road beyond the paved section is typically 18 feet wide with a couple of 16-foot segments. East Fork Road does not meet the fire code. Blaine County Engineer Jeff Loomis, Exhibit B1, page 5, paragraph 4 states, and I quote, "The widening of East Fork Road is not possible due to private property encroachment and wetlands," end quote. He recommends the county require indemnification, hold harmless agreement, from the applicant regarding limitations of county public services, including the acknowledgement of road width, limited winter access, and limited emergency services to this remote destination. In other words, the road cannot be widened to 20 feet. A legal question. Can the county approve a project knowing the roads, fire, and emergency services are substandard and then try and indemnify themselves? What happens when the facility is rented out? Is the indemnification valid with a third party? This camp cannot be adequately served by essential public services. This application certainly does not meet Standard 5 and raises many safety and access concerns. This is not a safe location for a camp of medically fragile children. Fire is a real and present danger. This is a dead-end canyon. Please do not allow children to be housed at the end of a narrow one-way in, one-way out dirt road. East Fork has not burned recently, but it will sooner or later, just like Greenhorn, and will put the lives of these special children in jeopardy. Thank you.
pro side, please.
Susan Connor, 49 Lane Ranch Road, Sun Valley. Lived here 16 years. My daughter Sarah Adcock was a camper and junior counselor at CRG. Currently, I volunteer with the Boulder Mountain Playworks to bring a play project to camp. Thank you. Retreat. The act of absenting oneself temporarily from the dangers or difficulties of life. Something which allows one to do this. A place to which one withdraws for peace, safety, etc. Webster's. Camp Rainbow Gold is a retreat. It provides the only group therapy a young camper will likely accept. One of the only places they find community with people like them. A safe place where people treat them as normal and don't gawk at them. It is a second family whose care will support them all their lives. A retreat from the daily routines defined by their illness and prior treatment. And yes, sometimes it is the only vacation a sick or post-treatment child can take, whether it be because of medical, physical, or financial needs. A place where they can be kids and have some fun, but also to come together yearly to honor their fellow survivors who are survivors no more. East Fork is an appropriate place for camp. The proposed camp is a low-impact use for the lot in question, including many small buildings and much open space. Camp generates little traffic as campers come in by bus and can find most of their activities to camp, and camp counselors stay for the entire camp session. As a volunteer for a Boulder Mountain Playworks project at camp the last few years, I can attest that we carpool to camp and find the day parking area almost mostly unused. East Fork Road already hosts school bus and residential car traffic, and CRG would not add significantly to that. As to the argument that it is too far from the hospital, CRG has a doctor and nurse on staff at all times, camps in session, and a medical facility currently mobile to provide necessary treatment until an attendee can be taken to the hospital. Indeed, when my daughter had a medical emergency at the current camp location, she arrived at the hospital hours before the hospital was ready to care for her. Why does Camp Rainbow Gold need a camp of their own? So they can support more of Idaho's young cancer survivors more fully and not have to turn kids, young adults, and families away from camp sessions that are currently at maximum capacity. So kids who have been ravaged by cancer, chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery can go to a camp that works for them, providing them the nutrition, the bathrooms, wheelchair access, and the experiences they need. And so Camp Rainbow Gold can spread its magic more often to more campers. As a parent of a former camper and volunteer, I ask you to please approve this conditional use permit.
Thank you. Contract, please.
Good evening, Brian Henderson, 177 Hyden View Drive. I wish to expand upon a letter to the Commission dated January 22nd, specifically paragraph 4 with respect to East Fork Road. East Fork Road does not meet county and state standards for a minimum width of 20 feet. According to surveyor Brian Yeager, survey study submitted on November 16, 2016, there are 29 locations where the road does not meet minimal width standards. As a result, the county has been unable to paint a median strip or borders past the first mile. There are no guardrails above exposed residential properties. Despite Ketchum Fire Department's statement submitted to the Commission that CRG must first widen the dirt road from Triumph to the proposed location, there are an additional 13 areas on the paved road pre-Triumph that do not meet the minimum 20-foot requirement. The county cannot selectively apply compliance, i.e. unpaved sections of road, solely for the purpose of acceding to CRG's request for a CUP, even if CRG has stated that they would help in that effort. Selective and arbitrary application of law is not what the citizens of Blaine County deserve. Aside from the lack of compliance to road width standards, as you all know, the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit is randomly enforced. Today, given traffic and constrained road width, residents, cyclists, joggers, pedestrians, and especially children are at considerable risk. This is more so during the summer months when CRG proposes doing construction over a 2-year period, and post-completion will represent an even greater risk due to greater traffic volume. CRG say that they will prefab buildings. Imagine prefab buildings in large, heavy, cumbersome equipment trying to navigate the East Fork Road as is, without first requiring cutting off access to the general public to accommodate these wide-load vehicles. Until CRG and Blaine County rehabilitate, widen, and improve the safety standards across the entire length of East Fork Road, the conditional use permit should be denied. The citizens of Blaine County should be given the option to vote on the cost of financing the complete rehabilitation and modernization of East Fork Road before granting a conditional use permit for such an ambitious, inadequately researched project and in terms of infrastructure impact, environment, and safety. Blaine County should consider that the average cost for a rebuilt road, two-way road rather, is approximately $4 million. The full 8-mile length East Fork Road would cost a minimum of $32 million, excluding the cost for safely repositioning existing gas, electrical, and telephone lines. Forget eminent domain. The conditional use permit should be denied.
Thank you. Go speaker, please.
Good evening, and thank you members of the commission for your time today. My name is Ray Davis, and I reside at 2454 Indian Springs Road in Elkhorn. I lived in the Wood River Valley for 27 years. 12 of those were in East Fork, where I was a homeowner and raised 2 children. I presently own and operate Ketchum Lighting and previously owned Davis Embroidery. My involvement with Camp Rainbow Gold started over 20 years ago when I was watching an Idaho public television program about children with cancer who got to go to this amazing outdoor camp for 1 week in McCall. You wouldn't know that they had cancer except for the fact that chemo had robbed them of their hair. Having an embroidery company, it was a pleasure to donate caps to help keep the sun off. A few years later, Camp Rainbow Gold moved to Cathedral Pines, and I became a camp counselor for 6 to 9-year-old boys. It wasn't until then that I truly realized the healing power camp has on everyone. Camp cannot be located just anywhere. It has to be in the settings of the mountains. The mountains heal, as we know. Our board and staff have looked extensively for the proper place to build a camp for life, and this property fills all those requirements. The camp will enhance the rural feel of the area, not detract from it. Camp Rainbow Gold not only wants to be a good neighbor with the East Fork residents, but also with the entire community. That is why they have gone to such great lengths to provide you, our commissioners, a solid plan that works for everyone. Living in East Fork, I watched it grow with the building of many homes in a wide range of sizes. None of those, including the largest, which were well over 12,000 square feet and took years to complete, had much of an impact on the road that we all shared. Cement trucks and construction workers came and went and will continue to do so as East Fork continues to grow, especially if large parcels of land are to be subdivided. The camp will be operating for 150 days out of the year. This impact would be, in many ways, less than a 5-lot residential subdivision. Traffic impacts are more sporadic than what would be generated by full-time residents and are further reduced by proposed carpooling measures. Camp Rainbow Gold has a successful and proven track record for 25 years. To me as a business owner, it makes sense to know whom your neighbors will be versus rolling the dice and getting something you never wished for. Camp Rainbow Gold will in fact constitute a conditional use as established for the zoning district involved, and this also constitutes a retreat, which is an authorized conditional use within the RR40 zone. In closing, I would like to say that Camp Rainbow Gold is a valuable asset to our community. It gives us a sense of purpose and pride. The economic impact alone is worth making sure it stays here. After it is built, I'm positive everyone, including those still living out in East Fork, will be proud to say, I live next door to Camp Rainbow Gold. I ask you to please approve the conditional use permit. Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Summers. I live at 106 Karst Drive in Triumph. I'm concerned about the future of the valley, concerned about the future of our canyon, and especially concerned that Camp Rainbow Gold will boldly go where they are not wanted or legally allowed to operate. I'm concerned about their disregard of the county's master plan as they try to jam their complex up our canyon and attempt to set a regrettable precedent. I'm concerned about Camp Rainbow Gold's disregard of you, the commissioners, that they would have you betray your constituency by undermining their equity, their lives, and pulling the rug of zoning protection out from under them. I'm concerned about Camp Rainbow Gold's priorities. If they are currently able to fund their entire annual operating budget with one recent fundraiser, why would they need to take on a $25 million project and paint themselves into a corner with such a limited season and large liability. They must be assuming that once they have their foot in the door, they will be able to obtain any additional CUPs they need to further their quasi-commercial venture, and ultimately do whatever they want or rent to whomever they choose. That $25 million, along with other write-offs and donations, could go a long way towards curing or treating some of these cancers. This deal seems bad to me. In regard to CUP standard number 7 that deals with foul odors and such, is Camp Rainbow Gold's inevitable need to use insecticides around the property. Being that this site is primarily wetlands and is surrounded by beaver pond swamps, it is heavily infested with mosquitoes and biting flies. Hardly an appropriate place for children with serious medical conditions. With the threat of mosquito-borne diseases, and just to prevent the kids from scratching their skin off, Camp Rainbow Gold will undoubtedly need to spray chemicals such as malathion. The use of carcinogenic chemicals around homes, grazing lands, and our watershed would seem unacceptable to us as well as the campers. Another concern I have is Camp Rainbow Gold's disregard for the community, trying to shame us into sacrificing our safety, quality of life, property values, and environmental quality. Calling us insensitive NIMBYs is wrong. Everyone has some kind of backyard that they value. As far as ours, it's zoned RR40. We did not sign up for any other and wish to preserve it. All that being said, I do hope Camp Rainbow Gold finds a more suitable and less controversial site, perhaps closer to their actual home, Boise. Thank you.
First speaker, please.
Thank you, commissioners and staff and fellow Blaine County residents, for your passionate advocacy for the welfare of this community. My name is Signe White. I reside at 225 Alturas Drive, which is Mid-Valley, just south of East Fork. I've been a resident of the Wood River Valley for 12 years. Although I only really live in the Wood River Valley for 7 months of the year, because the other 5 months of the year, specifically the summer and fall months, I reside on another Alturas Road, Lake Alturas Road in the Stanley Basin. I offer a unique perspective as the director of Camp Perkins. Camp Perkins is 46 miles from Ketchum at the end of a long dirt road, in an area that children run and play, although we avoid fireworks as well. Though the circumstances are different, we have a special use permit for just 10 acres of land. There are no homeowners as neighbors. There are some related concerns that I can speak to. Leasing the property to user groups and the visual and volume impact to our surroundings. For 12 weeks in the summer, between 100 and 200 people arrive to spend the week and the weekends at our 10 acres through our own programming and organizations that lease the camp. These lease groups are required to sign an extensive contract which outlines the expectations and restrictions during their stay on the property. Additionally, we have no fewer than 10 staff on site during active camp weeks with rental groups to assure that rules and good neighbor rules are followed. We have worked in this capacity with Camp Rainbow Gold for the last 8 years. They're familiar with the user end of a lease agreement, and I'm confident they can manage the other side. We have never had a problem with Camp Rainbow Gold as our renters. They respect the land, the facilities, the rules, and our mission as a Christian camp. Their staff and volunteers are exceptionally well trained. In fact, my experience with Camp Rainbow Gold is so outstanding that I require my staff to observe their best practices and emulate those in their own way, that they represent themselves to campers, families, volunteers, and service providers. After living in this county for 12 years, I'm always surprised to find out how many people have never heard of Camp Perkins. And when I tell them where it is, that it's just a little ways off of Lake Alturas Road, that they drive by several times to go camp down at Alturas Lake, they still don't know that there's a camp right there on Perkins Lake because they don't hear it. The sound is absorbed and dissipated. It still has a spacious and empty feel when there's 200 people in camp. I understand that having a summer camp in a neighborhood backyard seems incongruent with the idyllic quiet. If I can possibly encourage or reassure the commissioners that the impact of the sound for 200 people is far less than one might imagine. Camp Rainbow Gold has been an ideal renter, and you could not ask for a better neighbor. I ask you to approve the conditional use permit. Thank you.
My name is Ray Learman. I have lived in East Fork since 1990. Currently, we live at 117 Meadowbrook Road, about a mile down from Triumph. Like everyone here tonight, I support Camp Rainbow Gold's good work. However, I am opposed to their proposal for many reasons. I don't think Camp Rainbow Gold organization has been very transparent about the impact a camp this size is going to have on East Fork Canyon. For instance, at one of the committee meetings, they indicated that during a 2-year construction period, the carpenters and subcontractors will carpool to the job site. I've owned a construction company here since 1986. I can tell you that carpenters don't carpool because they need the tools. Subcontractors don't carpool either because they can't leave their equipment, fittings, fixtures, or other tools behind. Plus, many carpenters and subcontractors make multiple trips to town for material supplies and lunch. To indicate that the camp isn't going to be an increase on traffic on East Fork Road by a huge margin is simply a stretch, and a big one at that. Their lack of transparency in this regard alone gives me pause. Who's going to pay for the breakdown of the road surface of East Fork caused by all the construction vehicles? Loaders, dump trucks, cranes, etc. Camp Rainbow Gold is a non-profit and won't be contributed to the cost of the reconstruction of the road. That burden will fall on to everybody who lives in this county. I've long been a mountain biker. In fact, I have chosen to live in East Fork because of the access to the National Forest and all the mountain bike trails in the area. Every weekend we watch mountain bikers and hikers heading towards the Pioneer Mountains. A commercial facility this size at Camp Rainbow Gold is going to forever alter and diminish the quality of the outdoor experience in the East Fork and the National Forest. I'm also a road cyclist, and as a cyclist, I can tell you the increased traffic created by Camp Rainbow Gold is going to make riding on East Fork Road even more dangerous than it already is. The road is narrow with blind hills and corners, which makes cycling even more dangerous, makes cycling and even driving a car more dangerous. Throwing more cars into the mix is not a good idea. This is not the first time we've had to fight for the preservation of East Fork. De Novo Corporation tried to put a subdivision on top of Triumph Gulch. The EPA wanted to turn Triumph into a Superfund site. Peters Gulch was gated and no longer accessible to the public. It seems like we have one battle after another to keep East Fork pristine and wild. Thank you to the P&Z and the county commissioners for having our backs for a long time. I hope you will give my comments serious consideration. Allowing Camp Rainbow Gold in East Fork will. Thank you.
Thank you. Pro speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Dory Tunney, and I live at 12651 Highway 75 in Ketchum. I'm a 23-year resident of Blaine County. I am also a physician specializing in pediatrics, a CRG board member, and a volunteer for Camp Rainbow Gold for 13 years. CRG has and always will be a retreat. This is not a new term, a new concept, or a new definition to describe the programs we offer. Our Blaine County Code describes a retreat as a facility that provides for group withdrawal, prayer, meditation, study, and instruction under a director. This is exactly what we do every day at camp. Children have many ways of expressing themselves and learning that are vastly different than adults. Their activities are different, their coping mechanisms are different. I believe this county definition of a retreat was designed with adults in mind, not specifically children. Therefore, I believe the meditation descriptive does not apply in the strictest sense to children. Children do not meditate. However, all of our programs do fall under the categories of prayer, study, and instruction. This is precisely what we do at camp. CRG is a highly specialized camp. It is not your average kids camp. CRG provides many programs which are emotionally empowering, healing, introspective, and encourage self-expression and self-confidence. All of these experiences put a child on the road to emotional recovery. All of our programs are under the supervision of trained counselors, social workers, or directors. CRG provides circle time 3 times a day where all the campers gather in fellowship and recite a short prayer. CRG provides memorial services where we all gather to celebrate the lives of campers who have passed. We provide survivors helping survivors where teens gather under the supervision of a social worker to be counseled about their day-to-day struggles from the effects of cancer. We also provide a Toes Up experience where campers retreat to their cabins for a fellowship under the supervision of a counselor and are given time for self-directed prayer, reflection, discussions, and rest. If these programs don't describe a retreat, I don't know what does. All campers get the experience and ceremony of the pine cone where prayers for recovery are made. It's a very solemn and private event and a time of fellowship and caring. It is probably the most sacred of all our programs and is deeply respected. It is not akin to blowing out the candles on a birthday cake, as the opposition has so disrespectfully asserted in a letter to P&Z. Opponents have said, and I quote, "We are scared of what CRG will do." Fear? Let's put this into perspective. This is not real fear. Real fear is having a child with cancer. Thank you.
My name is Tom Bassett, and I moved here in 2012 from Vail, Colorado. My wife and I own a business in Ketchum, and we live at 205 Timberline Road in East Fork. And I'm commenting on Standard 1. The question before the board regarding CRG should not be judged on the mission of the organization seeking the conditional use permit, but by the standards set forth by Blaine County in their zoning regulations and the precedent that their decision will set for the future. CRG is seeking conditional use based upon it being a retreat. That does not exempt CRG from complying with the spirit of the zoning, which RR 40, allowing 1 residential unit per 40 acres. Their proposal to build 29 structures plus helipad, 2 septic systems, dining hall, etc. disregards the Blaine County zoning for the area in question and the impact on the residents of East Fork. Also, what happens to a $20+ million facility during the 322 days a year when it is not being used by Camp Rainbow Gold? How does the county control who qualifies to rent the property? If the conditional use permit is granted, East Fork residents lose their say in that matter. I mentioned my time in Vail, Colorado for a reason. I saw how 1 by 1 properties in that town were torn down and special improvement districts were created to circumvent existing zoning regulations and height restrictions, just as Camp Rainbow Gold is hoping to do in East Fork. Once the precedent was set, each new developer expected the same treatment from the town, and it changed Vail fundamentally within a period of 6 years. It went from an alpine village to an urban high-rise bedroom community. If this conditional use permit is granted, it sets a precedent that will affect not only residents of East Fork, but development across the Wood River Valley. This is a moment when action can be taken to preserve zoning integrity and protect the places that make living in the Wood River Valley what it is. I ask that you do not approve this conditional use permit.
First speaker, please.
I want to thank the commission for giving me this opportunity to speak. Perhaps too loudly? Okay. My name is Jim Dowling, and I live at 200 Camas Loop in Sun Valley. I am now retired, but my last occupation was as the owner of KLM Hardware. I also served on the Sun Valley Planning and Zoning and the City Council for Sun Valley. My wife and I have lived here for more than 40 years. Okay. I have served as a camp counselor for 2 years and have the opportunity to observe the process close up. About 25 years ago, I met Angnurgu Sherpa from Nepal. He would visit our valley during the summer, which is the rainy season in Nepal, and promote his trekking business. My wife and I got to know the whole family, including his wife and 4 lovely daughters. At the age of 13, the youngest daughter was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. For 2.5 years, she bravely fought that battle, and twice she was able to attend Camp Rainbow Gold, making friends and enjoying time, not worried about her illness. I have witnessed the value of Camp Rainbow Gold from several points of view. I ask you to approve the conditional permit that allows Camp Rainbow Gold to share the healing qualities of this site. I think the parents and children deserve a retreat if anyone does. Thank you.
Con speaker, please.
My name is Sonia Bielander and I live right next door. 20 years ago, my husband and I actively searched for a home that could offer isolation and an undeveloped environment. We put our trust in the Blaine County zoning laws and believed that there could only be one family home per 40 acres in this area. And this land next door could not be subdivided into many lots because of the wetlands, the mountain overlay, and the avalanche problems. None of the surrounding properties could be subdivided any further, and we checked into that. According to Linda O'Connor's submitted testament, they could only find 2 buildable lots on this property because of all these obstacles. So according to that, this can never be a 4 or 5 lot subdivision as stated by Camp Rainbow Gold. We chose to raise our family in this rural setting despite 20 years of challenges, like driving our 4 kids to school as the school bus refused to travel on this road because it was too dangerous. We signed a waiver absolving the county of legal responsibilities should my family require emergency services, and spotty cell phone and internet service for many years that we still have spotty internet cell service. Seeing Camp Rainbow Gold's video has rattled me to the core. It has threatened the major investment we have in our home. No one can say a complex of this magnitude will not affect property values. It directly impacts the desirability of living in this area. As a person looking for privacy and seclusion will not find it here. Less desirability is usually followed by less value. 29 buildings on about 60 buildable acres, that's 7 times more than housing density that is allowed as of now. Imagine for a moment the Limelight Hotel, instead of being 5 stories tall, it would be 35 floors. This is not harmonious with the character of the general vicinity. This large project will undoubtedly change the essential character of this area, not just the high density of buildings, but by having a helipad, outdoor theater, anticipated commercial traffic to sustain a camp, 24-hour lighting for camp safety, and the outdoor activities and noise that a camp this size will naturally generate from 200 plus people. The adjoining neighbors to the east side of the property will be affected the same way as we are, and that hasn't been mentioned. And because of this, they have chosen to put their retirement move to Blaine County on hold. Lastly, the imposition of Camp Rainbow Gold in a location where it is widely opposed has created a negative emotional and psychological impact on the residents of this neighborhood. If the CUP is approved and the camp built, it will forever be a reminder that Camp Rainbow Gold imposed itself on the community and county-wide existing zoning, and residents' concerns can be ignored. I ask that you deny Camp Rainbow Gold's application.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to take a little different tact, I think, on this. I would first like to thank the Blaine County P&Z and remind you that my name is Bob Rosso. Thank you. I need to be reminded. I would like to thank the P&Z and the county commissioners, even though I know they're not here tonight, for the service that you give to our community and the time spent on this issue. My wife Kate and I live at 215 East Galena Street in Haley. We opened our business, the Elephant's Perch Outdoor Store in Ketchum in 1976, the year it did not snow, and somehow we're still in business. We lived for 14 years in Hidden Hollow, right next to the Gordon Paving batch plant. Remember those days? We also lived 1 year in Triumph while we built our new home in Hyman Peak subdivision, where we then lived for 10 years. So you kind of get the picture here. We have a little tour of the valley. We now have lived 18 years in Haley, where our son Steve went to school, and he's now a power lineman in Wyoming. I am very proud personally to have served 20 years on the BCRD Board of Directors, where we experienced many of the same challenges over the years as the trail systems and the recreational amenities were established. I still serve on the BCRD, Galena, and the Trails Advisory Committee. There was a lot of concern and challenge on the railroad conversion to a bike path for both summer and winter. It appears to be working out pretty well. Thanks a lot to that gentleman up there who worked with us. I continue to work hard with a number of organizations to keep our valley a very special place to live. We have good friends involved with the Camp Rainbow Gold, and we've attended some of their benefits. It is a humbling experience, to be sure. We have served on the NAB group, which is the Nordic and Backcountry Alliance, where we faced and largely have solved major conflicts between the motorized and non-motorized activities. I would like to be clear that when I say we, it's not just me. It is always a group of people who care and work hard to protect all of the things that we love in this area. The challenges and concerns are always there. The growth and benefits for the entire community are vitally important. When good people come together, it's amazing what can be accomplished. I want to thank you very much for the comprehensive and extensive research that you have put into this project, the input that's come from the people in the audience, and I would like to ask you to approve the conditional use permit for Camp Rainbow Gold. Thank you.
Thank you. Clown speaker, please.
My name is Brian Weber. I'm a full-time resident of Haley, Idaho. I've resided in the Wood River Valley full-time for over 40 years. I would first like to say thank you to everyone in attendance tonight. I always say the world is run by people who show up. I would like to thank the Blaine County Planning and Zoning Commissioners for hearing both sides of this emotionally charged topic and hopefully coming to a decision that truly best suits the long-range planning of this valley. I think it is safe to say that everyone in this room, regardless of where you stand on tonight's issue, has somehow been directly or indirectly affected by cancer. My mother died at an early age from this dreaded disease. I do understand how this disease affects more than just the patient, their family, and friends. I think that is best for all concerned to take the emotion of cancer out of this discussion and ultimately out of the planning and zoning decision, and for us to focus on the real issue here. That issue is zoning. I've been asked to read a letter that I sent to Blaine County Planning and Zoning Commissioner, dated January 15, 2017. Dear Blaine County Planning and Zoning, I am a longtime, full-time resident of the Wood River Valley and have supported Camp Rainbow Gold through my family-owned business with donations, raffle prizes, and gifts for over 20 years. I am 100% supportive of Camp Rainbow Gold's mission. I am very concerned about Camp Rainbow Gold's potential new location in Eastport. There are numerous reasons why I believe Camp Rainbow Gold should continue looking for a location that would better suit its needs and have less negative impact on fewer people. But I will address just one here. I understand that under current zoning law, RR40, only one dwelling is allowed for 40 acres. When the 3 adjoining neighbors to the proposed Camp Rainbow Gold mega development purchased their property, they abided by the law. They built responsibly and they followed the zoning laws. I feel that any entity, whether it's the Boy Scouts of America, the Girl Scouts of America, or Camp Rainbow Gold, needs to follow the same zoning laws. The proposed magnitude of Camp Rainbow Gold's camp is completely out of place and will have enormous negative impact on its neighbors. Making an exception to the zoning law, regardless of the camp's mission, is simply wrong. In closing, on a number of direct mailings to our home from Camp Rainbow Gold, they stated, and I quote, We want to listen to our potential neighbors. End of quote. I believe that the neighbors have spoken loud and clear and are against building of this mega complex. I think Blaine County Planning and Zoning and the County Commissioners should vote no on the Camp Rainbow Gold application in East Fork. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ed Sanat. I'm a resident of Cold Springs, 138 Meadows Loop. I've lived in the Wood River Valley since 1973, raised a family, started a business, embraced the lifestyle, enjoyed the wonderful, generous people I call friends and neighbors who live in our community. Someone said that this is not about the kids. Yes, it is about the kids, or we would not be talking about road safety, fire danger, water usage, retreats, and construction traffic. If CRG goes away tomorrow, no one will worry about the safety of the road or the fire safety for those people who built on this property. A property that can accommodate 4 large homes, outbuildings, football fields of lawns, ponds, 4th of July parties, weddings, fireworks, and the discharge of firearms. No one will complain about the impact of these developments on East Fork Road or the continuous year-round need for plumbers, contractors, maintenance people, landscapers, snow removal, buses. If these are truly issues, then further development out East Fork Road should be stopped, and the existing homes evacuated until the road is safe and the danger is mitigated. We've heard a lot about zoning and its interpretation. Zonings are guidelines that are efforts to help guide development. The commission that developed these ordinances tried to peer into the future. As a past member of the Ketchum P&Z, I can tell you this is an inexact science. We can't write enough words to govern eventuality or use. We can only write broad guidelines. We change, life changes, uses changes. It's not the 10 Commandments chiseled into stone. But what were the commissioners thinking 10, 20 years ago? I think they intended to use the word retreat not as a way to exclude a camp, but as a word that is more general, an all-inclusive, broad designation to accommodate a wide range of uses. The zoning allows for a retreat. A retreat is a refuge or an escape from the hustle and bustle and pressures of everyday life. A camp is a retreat or a refuge. It's an escape filled with laughter and fun, emotional hearing, happiness, new friends, and immersion in the natural beauty of the surroundings. For 1 week, the CRG campers are escaping from the reality of the other 51 weeks of the year that they call living with cancer. So let's not fool ourselves. It is certainly about the kids. Our community has selfishly supported many great organizations with their money and their time to help those that are less fortunate. So instead of frowning when a CRG bus goes by, let's walk outside, get off our bikes, pull over to the side of the road, embrace the moment, and welcome kids that are going to enjoy 1 week of their lives being a kid, 1 week away from chemo, 1 week enjoying the therapeutic outdoors that all of us take for granted. The outdoors should not be bottled up and rationed, but rather shared and enjoyed, especially for those less fortunate. Commissioners, look into your hearts and souls. Pass a smokescreen that is called NIMBYism and find the compassion, sensibility, and reasoning that is the hallmark of our community, and approve the CRG's conditional use permit, because it is about kids. We only ask they go to their retreat, 7 miles up a canyon called East Fork.
One speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Jess Walcott. I live in Triumph with my husband and 4 daughters. I moved to East Fork in 1989, just after my dad died of cancer. Standard 9 addresses loss or damage of a natural resource, and in this case, wetlands. The property we are discussing has wetlands throughout it and is part of one of the biggest wetlands in Blaine County. The west end of the proposed building site is the beginning of this massive wetland. CRG shows plans with a path crossing this wetland on the west end of the property in their nature area. It has been deemed a path, but according to Ketchum Fire Chief, it must be 12 feet wide and able to bear 75,000 pounds. A path that would need to bear 75,000 pounds is a road, but it can't be called a road because it crosses a wetland, so instead it is being called a path. Building a path like that would require digging below ground to place cobble and gravel, and then above ground road mix in order to make a surface capable of bearing that amount of weight. Will this path then act as a dam, essentially splitting this part of the wetland in half? How will this path not disturb natural currents and flow patterns? Will proposed utility trenches interrupt subterranean flow? It's unavoidable that the size and scale of this development will have a negative impact on existing and sensitive wetlands and riparian zones. The bird sanctuary that exists as a result of this giant wetland is remarkable. I have witnessed ornithologists who drive from all over the state to view countless birds who choose this wetland as a breeding ground because it is enormous, it's remote, and it's pristine. Because of the acres of stagnant water, this wetland also hosts an unbearable mosquito situation during the summer months. It is inconceivable that CRG will not be forced to spray some sort of chemical. What will happen to the wildlife and our drinking water if the camp is built and it quickly becomes evident that the mosquito situation is really real? And it will make it difficult for people, anyone, to enjoy themselves outside. Will they spray for these insects? And what will they spray? I am 100% positive that campers' time will be compromised because of these mosquitoes, and trust me, the only thing that works against them is something like DEET, which is a toxic chemical, and it won't even work. Will CRG agree to not apply pesticides, herbicides, or other chemicals? I am in support of CRG's overall mission as a camp, but there is no way for CRG to build structures, parking lots, roads, 60,000 square feet of septic fields, and operate as a camp without disrupting this wetland. Thank you.
First speaker, please.
My name is Jennifer Terra. I live at 241 Pocahontas in Haley. I have lived in the valley since I was 12. When I grew up, there was only one traffic light between Timmerman Hill and Stanley. My, how things have changed. I have also been an avid hiker in the Cove Creek, East Fork, and Hindman areas for the last 25 years. I would like to start by saying that the East Fork Road is not treacherous. 6 months out of the year, I drive out there 2 to 4 times a week for hikes, and it's fine. If it is so worrisome, perhaps installing a couple more speed bumps or lowering the speed limit would ease some minds. As was previously mentioned, it's obviously not so perilous to keep residents from making trips back and forth daily, even in winter. Many more accidents occur on Highway 75. I think it's important to look at the big picture here. This valley is no longer a secret. In fact, it's been pretty exploited, and this means increasing development and traffic everywhere, whether we want it or not. So we need to ask ourselves, what will preserve the integrity of this space? The way it is now zoned, it could be a lovely landfill, or 5 more multi-million-dollar monstrosities that don't mesh with the landscape. Perhaps you would like to see it mined, or even better, a cattle ranch that not only pollutes rivers and streams, but just destroys the environment. Or maybe, just maybe, you would like to see a rustic camp that blends into the natural landscape, one that fits into the surrounding beauty, a camp with kids enjoying and recreating in nature, a camp that, among other things, teaches future generations how to love, respect, and preserve nature. That would be the ideal neighbor. I know that's what I would want to see driving out East Fork. So many people keep saying it isn't about cancer, but actually it kind of is. If these children weren't sick, if there was a cure for cancer, Camp Rainbow Gold wouldn't exist and there wouldn't be a need for a permanent camp. I don't know if people realize half this property is being donated and how important a donation of this magnitude is to a nonprofit. I don't know if you realize the poor shape Cathedral Pines is in and how run down it has become. I'm pretty sure they are the same cabins I stayed in 30+ years ago at environmental camp. They weren't in great shape then. These kids deserve a place to forget about their illness, to learn to appreciate the beauty of nature, and have fun. This is the perfect place. It's time for our community to do something worthwhile for generations to come, something that gives us a sense of pride. We should be honored as a community to be given this opportunity to show our generosity, compassion, kindness, and unselfishness toward this organization. Thank you for your time and consideration.
One speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Maria Gerhardt.
I'm an 18-year resident of East Fork. I would like to address a couple of issues with Camp Rainbow Gold's application. First, Camp Rainbow Gold claims that their project is modest, not massive at all, and is in keeping with the rural feel of the area. I collated data from the Blaine County website to give you a visual perspective of the camp's massive project in our neighborhood. It's behind you. The camp has been given a sweetheart land deal in a remote residential area zoned RR40, or 1 unit per 40 acres in East Fork, and is asking the PNC to approve a camp on one lot consisting of 260 acres. Actually, 60 acres of questionable buildable land due to constantly changing wetlands. This is data challenging the camp's claim. Shown here are the 6 neighboring residents' properties, and highlighted in yellow in the bottom is the camp's data. I want to call your attention to the fact that the camp's development of 28 structures is 9 times more than what currently exists. It consists of 60,000 square feet, which is 5 times more than the nearest neighbor, with 200 people in residence, which is 50 times more than what currently exists. This is a massive development and is not harmonious and in keeping with the low-density rural nature of the area. This grandiose camp that includes a dining hall, amphitheater, health center, art center, nature center, welcome center, reflection center, staff housing, pump house, greenhouse, shower houses, roads, parking areas, storage barn, 14 cabins, 33,000 square feet septic system, horse, bicycle, ATV trails, rock wall, helipad, and a future pool is massive and has no place in a rural residential area. Second, in the camp's noise mitigation study, which says that in the absence of local codes, they arbitrarily assigned 60 decibels to be the threshold. The camp further states the camp of 200 participants will unlikely exceed that threshold. The FAA says that a jet noise sound level of 65 decibels is incompatible with residential communities, much less a rural environment. It's like saying the camp is not going to be as loud as the airport flight path, so it's okay. No, it's not okay. The threshold should be the quiet that exists there now. That should be the base measurement because that is what property owners bought into when they purchased their property in the RR40 zoning. It is what recreationists anticipate when they recreate in the area, and it is what the local wildlife need for predator and prey avoidance and detection. Additionally, the camp claims that construction noise is temporary and seasonal, so long-term related adverse effects is relatively insignificant. So again, residents are being forced to endure construction noise and disruptions 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday, 11 hours on Saturday and 10 hours on Sunday for 2, 3, 4 years of construction. This is not relatively insignificant, it's outrageous. This camp is out of scale, it is grandiose and not in keeping with the rural character of the East Fork Canyon, the Blaine County Comprehensive Plan, and the present RR40 zoning. Say no to the camp in East Fork.
Co-speaker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Steve Kearns. I live at 231 Broadford Road. I'm a 36-year resident of Blaine County. I served 4 years on the Haley City Council and 4 years as the mayor of Haley. In my years of public service and in attending many meetings like this since, I've heard every kind of not in my backyard excuse and opposition to development that you can imagine. But the thing is, most of those objections are understandable from the point of view of those that are affected. And we shouldn't just dismiss those objections as greedy self-interest. But what we should do, what I try to do as a public official, is evaluate those according to the ordinance and according to what is in the public interest. I think CRG has clearly demonstrated that the facility will be designed, constructed, and operated to be harmonious with the existing character of the general vicinity, as specified in criteria number 3. Further, the camp will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighbor uses. No hazardous activities are allowed at the camp. And CRG has offered mitigation for construction. That's something that is not required by the county if that property were to be sold to a private individual. The biggest concern for most residents is traffic on East Fork Road. It's understandable. There will be increased traffic on East Fork Road. That's not in dispute. The question is whether this small increase in traffic, as designated by the traffic study, is enough to override and outweigh the benefit to our community that's provided by Camp Rainbow Gold. You can't have a vibrant, healthy community without growth and development. That means change. Healthy communities change over time, and we look to our public officials to help us guide that growth and that change. To do that, it's in the best public interest. It's hard to imagine a more worthy endeavor in the public interest than that served by Camp Rainbow Gold. The lives of hundreds of children with cancer, their families, and those who work with them will be so uplifted by this camp that we should all be proud to support this. I urge the Commission to vote for the public interest, to vote for the lives of the children with cancer, and to vote to approve this conditional use permit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. On speaker, please.
Nick Marisich, 1720 Eroic Road, Haley, Idaho. I've lived here for 59 years. I am here to represent Triumph Ranch, Inc. I don't think they've actually had a word at one of these meetings. But first I want to say this is a really difficult application and project to be against. I really want to acknowledge what Camp Rainbow Gold does and brings to Idaho and certainly our community in our valley. It's awesome. And what P&Z is doing to hear both sides of this. This is a process. I think it's really important. It's part of the democratic process, and it's really, really awesome. However, the road east of Triumph itself bisects Triumph Ranch specifically. The road it's a dirt road. It's an easement by prescription. It's sort of developed over the history of access out East Fork. It's never really been, it's been improved once over the years, and the corner at Hyman Creek has been improved once over the years. I just want to go on record that we watch that road pretty closely, and we've allowed access over it. There is points in the road that are dangerous. The owners of Triumph Ranch, Inc. have implied that a prescriptive easement is 50 feet wide. There is a possibility that if you need to improve this and make it safe for fire services and so forth, emergency services, there is a corner in the road directly west of the bridge that may need to be straightened out, and in which case you'd be needing to probably talk to, if you need to improve the road beyond 50 feet, there will be a discussion needed with Triumph Ranch, Inc. Also, I want to, their position is, or our position, when the county rezoned to RR40, we supported that. We thought it was in keeping with the rural nature of East Fork, and the feeling of Triumph Ranch, Inc. is that a development of this level is not in keeping with our R40 intent, if you will. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Co-speaker, please.
Good evening, Tim Tyree, 2030 Briarwood, Haley, Idaho. Commissioners, staff, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak tonight. I'd like to share with you my personal experience with Camp Rainbow Gold. I'm a cancer survivor and a volunteer of Camp Rainbow Gold for 26 years. I've been involved with Camp Rainbow Gold its entire time here in the Wood River Valley, and I'd like to thank everyone that's spoken tonight in support of Camp Rainbow Gold, and I hope that you will find in support of Camp Rainbow Gold as well. I'd like to share with you my personal experience of why we are a retreat. When through my role in Camp Rainbow Gold, I've served multiple times as a director of camp. So it has been my role to organize the camp, to train its volunteers. And as we go through the training, our current training involves over 24 hours of training, that's 3 8-hour days, to ensure that our counselors have the experience and skills necessary to provide for a safe and productive camp. And when I provided that training, I spoke to our counselors about the opportunity to be more than just a camp, to provide that opportunity for these children to open up and to process the challenges that they go through as cancer survivors. As a cancer survivor myself, I know just how difficult it is to be able to process that, The physicians will heal our body, but who is there to be able to provide the emotional support that is necessary to come through the reactions that we get in the community? When I was going through my cancer treatment, I was a white, bald boy who was getting flicked off by people assuming that I was a white supremacist. It was just a wonderful time. So being able to have a camp family that will provide the support and the emotional needs that we all go through, it's an amazing place to be. If you do find, and I hope you will find, that we are a retreat, you do have the ability to impose conditions upon our use to make it harmonious with the neighboring community. And CAMP has provided a number of conditions that we're willing to agree to that will help to address our program. A number of those include an indemnity, a way that we can minimize our use and in traffic, how we can remain harmonious with the open area. We've mentioned that we will cluster our community in all. It will leave open 200 acres of land that will remain harmonious with the use. And then Commissioner Rennell, you mentioned a question on the number of people that will attend camp. Remember, just like in your own homes, we will have 200 people that we'll be able to feed in any one day. And that 200 capacity will, in effect, limit our ability. That 46 room will not be used in the same time that the rest of the dining facility will be. Thank you very much.
We done with both sides?
Let me just say one thing.
Hang on. Have we had 12 from both? Okay, thank you. I did pick him, yes, that's why I'm asking. What happened? I guess someone missed a count.
Let me just say one thing here.
I'm sorry. No, Scott, I can't really.
Well, I share the driveway with Camp Rainbow.
There's the follow-up public hearing next week.
Pardon?
There's the follow-up public hearing next week. There will be additional opportunity.
Next week, right, yes.
Would you like me to go through the schedule before we conclude tonight?
Yeah, let's go through the schedule, Tom, and then I will take a motion to adjourn.
Okay, so as far as additional questions from the Planning and Zoning Commission, those should be submitted to the Land Use Office by noon on Monday. We'll publicize this, but that should be, to let you know, noon on Monday for additional questions. The applicant then should respond to those questions by noon Wednesday. There will be an additional public hearing in this location at 6:30 next Thursday, March 16th. Additional written comment would be allowed to the commission by Wednesday, the 22nd of March. Then the applicant will have some response time. It would be the following Tuesday, March 28th. And the current plan is for there to be a final, wouldn't be a hearing necessarily, but a meeting or deliberation on this application that is currently scheduled for April 6th, Thursday, April 6th at 6:30. The location of that is to be determined. And we will post this schedule on the website Monday morning, so anyone can refer to it at that point.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I think that concludes everything. Can we have? Can I have a motion to adjourn from the commissioner?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
And all in favor? Aye. Thank you.